Okay, we're about to get started. 20 seconds.
20 seconds, John. I'm on.
Somebody spoke. I didn't see where it came from. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with this May 3rd, 2025 budget workshop. If I can please have the city clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Villa-Vasquez.
Present.
Commissioner Caldwell.
Here.
Commissioner Howington.
Here.
Commissioner Lilly. Commissioner Santiago. Vice Mayor Harriet.
Here.
Mayor Villa.
Here. If we can please stand for the pledge, and I'll have Vice Mayor Harriet do the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. This time we're going to go ahead and start with business fiscal year 2025 through 2026 budget discussions.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Welcome to everybody this morning. I appreciate you coming out on the Saturday morning for us. This is the first of numerous budget workshops. I lost my voice a couple days ago, so now I sound like Suzanne Plachette. Just give a heads up on that. This is the CIP capital and service enhancements. This is generally, I don't want to use the word wish list because it sounds like unnecessary things. They're absolutely necessary items, equipment as well as projects, but we don't have the final budget, which we're going to be working on bringing to the commission and having several discussions over the next several months. This is big picture stuff to say, are you pleased with what we're bringing to you? Are there things that you would like to see, or the projects that you would not like to see, at least in this next year's budget? So when we get done with all the details of line items for each of the departments, we'll be able to look back then and say, okay, here's the projects that we discussed at this meeting and how we can fit them in as we combine then projects with everyday operations and have a final budget by August, September, October in place on October 1st. So today's just overall discussion. I'm going to ask John to speak, to go through as much as he can through the actual slideshow, and then maybe go back to questions afterwards so we don't get hung up too much on the first, second slide, and third slide, and so on. But maybe as you're going through, if you can make some notes on your slides, and then towards the end with questions, we can go back to slide 2, slide 7, and you'll have your notes right there of what you wanted to ask at that point, unless it's something obviously operational that you need to ask that moment. So, John McKinney, Finance Director.
Good morning, Mayor, Commission. How are y'all doing today? Good morning. Good morning. The first thing I'd like to point out, I handed 3 replacement pages for you. The first replacement page is regarding Station 62 as part of the general fund project list in Fund 301. And then the last 2 pages we updated, just reorganized it by fund, and it's the last 2 pages of your binder. Okay, there's been no other changes at this point. I've also handed out, Mayor, the master capital outlay and fleet replacement and capital outlay to the public, so they all have an overall copy of what we're discussing today. They don't have the binder, but it is available online. Okay. Okay. The first thing I'd like to do is, number one, thank the finance team, Tori and Keon, for helping to get this presentation and this book put together, as well as all the department directors and their staff over the last few weeks putting this together as well. So today, we're going to talk about the overall parameters, the various capital improvements of the various funds, capital outlay, enhancement requests, affordable housing, city fees, and special assessments. So the parameters today is that, as I've spoken about back in February, the budget process is very fluid, and the city manager just stated that as well. All the requests presented herein are preliminary and contingent upon the results of forthcoming rate studies, anticipated interagency revenues, and the approval of the operating millage. We truly won't know where we're at with our taxable value until we get our pre-preliminary numbers the first day of June. The property appraiser has been giving it out earlier and earlier, but they typically give it out in June, and we won't even know where we are with our state revenues typically until mid to late July. Okay. So I just wanted to just kind of throw a couple of terms out there so that it kind of frames how we've put this this workshop together, the binder that you all have before you. Capital outlay is spending to acquire capital assets, vehicle and equipment. So when you see in here the term capital outlay, we're talking about vehicles and equipment. Construction in progress, or CIP, capital improvements, those are projects to enhance the community, roads, facility, infrastructure. Could be a new building, could be a new lift station, water plant, sewer plant. It could be piping, culverts, et cetera, under the road. It has a far-reaching impact to the city of Deltona and its citizens over just basic capital outlay. O&M, operations and maintenance, that's just routine costs to operate and maintain the assets that the city has. And then you have your R&R. We use these funds to fund major rehab to restore or extend the asset life. Roof replacement, HVAC upgrade. Painting a wall, replacing carpet, milling and resurfacing. That's really more R&R. That is not a CIP. Okay. So we're going to go into our capital improvements 301 CIP. The first thing is, for everyone in here, we've always known 301 as the municipal complex. That was originally created back when they built this building, the municipal complex. But we've used it for other things over the years. So as part of Monday night's mid-year budget amendment, it has that new name to capital improvements. So just so there's no confusion going forward for anyone. We have 3 projects online for next year's funding. The finalization of City Hall improvements related to the building department and the customer service all going down into the lobby area so that we're centralizing the cash collections and customer service citywide into City Hall versus other facilities. We have the second phase of the fire training complex, and we have the potential relocation of Fire Station 62, maybe somewhere else into the CRA district or closely nearby. If it remains within the CRA district, we have the opportunity that we can purchase the land for that station relocation out of the CRA and CDBG funds potentially, because it's not only within the district, but it's in the census tract for the CDBG. So with that, again, this is all based on preliminary funding, but I can tell you that all of the funding for these 3 projects are fully funded using prior year fund balance that's available within the general fund. Next, we're going to go to Parks Capital Improvement. Again, that fund.
Are we going to do questions on each slide, or do you want us to wait till the end?
I think it's better if we question as he goes along, because we're going to lose.
Just so we don't get hung up on one slide for a half hour, it's going to be a long day, but certainly if there's something that's hot that you need to talk about at this moment.
Because I have questions on this also, so you go first.
It's up to us.
Do you have questions on that slide?
Yeah, the only question I have is the $3 million for Fire Station 62. You've got land acquisition, design, and construction. Is that for all 3 phases, or just for the?
No, sir, that's just the overall project title that's taken from the 5-year CIP. So if we just took the title from your tab 1, page 1.
Perfect.
But that's a good point, so that it's only for land acquisition for year 1.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. I have a question, 2 questions. Do we have a location yet for the fire training complex? Or are we still looking?
Yes, ma'am. Niles Road. Did I say that correctly, Chief? Day Road.
Oh, okay, behind the post office and the church.
That is correct. And any questions that Keon, Tori, or I can't answer, then we always have all the department directors back there as well.
Okay. My second question is the fire station, which is on Diamond, which is District 3. Is this CRA funds going to the CRA board for approval? Because this is not a commission approval.
That is correct. So the next stage would be when we bring this back to the board for their budget approval. We're looking at taking that the first meeting in August. So that would be something that obviously has to be approved by the board first. Then it would then relate to the city budget.
Thank you, appreciate that.
But we have been in coordination with John Cox on all of this.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cole.
On the renovations at City Hall, or the City Hall improvements, building department, does that include I know we're talking about moving the water department over to this part of town too. Does that include those improvements?
That is correct. And some of that is also, this is to finalize it, and we have additional money that is part of the mid-year budget as well, Monday night.
On Monday night? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, because I know the project's going to cost well over the $100,000 that we're...
Yes, sir. There's $250,000 for the mid-year budget for next Monday night.
All right, thank you.
This was just hopefully phase 2, that if we do need it, it's there, but if we don't need it, then it will be removed towards the end of the fiscal, the year before we adopt this budget.
Go ahead. We can move forward.
Okay.
Okay, let's make sure we use our iPads. Go ahead, Commissioner.
What is the total cost of the City Hall improvements? Because we've already started some of those renovations, have we not?
For upstairs, yes, ma'am. I believe that budget was, we can get back to you, I want to say it was $140,000, but that had nothing to do with this portion of the project. This is a brand-new project,
So this is separate from that?
completely separate.
And are we under budget on the other project, or are we over budget? Where do we stand?
We're
with
under a
these?
budget.
We're under budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, please continue.
Okay. Moving on to Fund 302, that used to be also named Parks Project, so to be have continuity, Parks Capital Improvements, so that we're keeping the same naming. So within the Parks Improvement, specifically right now, as part of next year's budget, we have West Crowell Park, Dewey Boster, Thornby Park, between those three. And we're looking at pavilion improvements, restroom replacement, and playground replacement. Then the last couple of days, Wednesday, Thursday night, there were some additional workshops that were held, talking about major improvements of Tom Hoffman Park, Festival Park, Harris Saxon Park, Keysville Park, and Manny Rodriguez Park. All of these projects for next year add up to $8.25 million. That as well is completely funded by fund balance if that's the way we choose to move forward. So these projects are 100% funded.
Commissioner Colwell, then Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
The Keysville Park improvements, I think the dog park, that's the dog park, correct?
Yes.
We're putting a track pavilion and a playground in there at the dog park?
Yes, it's a large park, if you're familiar with it. There's a walking trail now, but it's just dirt as you walk around.
So has there been a request for those be put into that park? Or?
Yeah, these meetings, public meetings, were just the last couple of days. It's going to be coming back to the commission, the designs, to see if you'd like to move forward.
Okay.
Right now, we're still going to be putting all the numbers together. We just want to see what the community said first about it, but they seem to be very pleased with the overall designs.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez and Commissioner Howington.
Thank you, Mayor. So I did attend a presentation on Thursday in West Crowell Park. I thought it was a great presentation. I was a little disappointed that there are not one park of District 3. I have 4 parks in my district. 2 are in desperate need of upgrading. 1 which disappears from the map during flooding. And I was just disappointed not to see Van Park and Lake Gleason Park in that project. I was also disappointed not to see Lakeshore part of that project. Although I got a reason for Lakeshore, but I just want to understand what that reason is, if litigation or something.
I can speak about that if you like. Van Park is one also that there's not much you can do other than the asphalt parking lot, so they're not running through ruts. Other than that, it's pretty much a flood zone. When it floods, it's taken over, so that wasn't brought up to a meeting. We tried to limit how many parks at one time to bring to you guys, and the commission may decide only to do one or two of all these parks. The Gleason, we haven't gotten into the details yet on that also. That's one that's a flooded zone also. Lakeshore Park is, we're trying to finalize the numbers now of going backwards with this 4B project, as everybody knows about. We're trying to finish the construction first before we go and redo that park. That park's going to be a potential diamond for the city. And it's not something that we want to rush anyway, just to have a community meeting and let's do whatever we say, because at this moment, we don't know what the final project's going to look like, potentially, because we're still trying to figure out where the pipes are going for the straw to move the water out of the lake. We're even talking about possibly another location on the lake, which would free up Lakeshore as an entirely different park, having a ramp in another area of Lake Monroe. So that's why that's not part of it. That's a much bigger diamond for the city as opposed to just a park with some basic upgrades. But as we said, right now this was just kind of to touch a few parks just to get started, and then come back over time.
I was feeling like the stepchild because, only District 3 parks were not touched. I just want to understand, on the master plan spreadsheet, you have Festival Park improvements twice. You have playground replacements, and then you have park improvement. Isn't that the same thing?
Yes, ma'am, but on that, for project number 5, which is for fiscal year 25-26, then the other festival park is a project that's not till 29-30. So just based on what we received over the last week on Festival Park, that project that's listed in the out years might actually go away.
Okay.
I mean, this is information, ma'am, that we just received middle of this week, so where we added all of these projects, so all the out years things might not have been changed yet.
Okay, does that also apply for number 2 at Dewey Boster? You have restroom replacement, and then you also have on 14 Dewey Boster, wait, not 15,
15.
10. Restroom replacements, isn't that the same thing?
That is correct, same thing. Additional projects were added this week, so we have to go in and fix the out years. So when we were putting this presentation together this week, we were only focused on the funding for fiscal year 25-26.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Howington, then Vice Mayor Harriet.
Manny Rodriguez Park, I've had a lot of reports that we have a lot of stormwater issues over there, and they've had a high water table that's causing flooding within the restrooms. And I've heard that there's a raw sewage issue over there. Is that included in some of these repairs? I see it says and more, but are we addressing these issues?
Would you like
Mark, please give an overview.
Good morning, Mark Manning. The stormwater issues are not part of the parks. There was an issue after the last storm that was rectified immediately, and that has not happened since. The park improvements you see from Manny Rodriguez do not include the stormwater.
Does it include restrooms?
The restrooms are new there. They were put in 2 years ago, and we had a flooding issue after Hurricane Milton because there was a stormwater issue. That was taken care of by the stormwater department. That has not happened since.
Okay, so we don't have an ongoing.
We don't have an ongoing issue. That was a one-time thing.
Thank you.
Are you done, Commissioner?
Yes.
Okay. Vice Mayor Harriet.
Yes. On Lakeshore, are we still looking at the possibility of relocating that road with the county and moving the boat ramp, shifting the location of the boat ramp?
That is an option.
Okay.
We're in discussions with that, yes.
Okay.
Can we also bring the residents of that area into discussion?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we continue?
Yes, sir.
One thing, John, if I may, please. At mid-year, we will also, as we go through the process, relook at all the funds. There may be some park funds that we bring back to you all that are left in the current year that we can allocate to some of your parks and some of the parks that haven't been identified. But it's early on in the process for us to be able to do that, but we hope to be able to do that hopefully by August time. So we may start some of the other smaller parks, or that money may go to Lake Shore. That'll be your decision. But there are additional funds that we haven't brought to you yet, but we don't know where we're ending this year. So there's a little bit left still.
There also, if I could, Mayor, just Veterans Park, I met with them on Sunday afternoon, the Veterans Board, to discuss the sidewalks not being ADA and some other issues of possibly joining the two buildings together so the museum could be expanded. That isn't necessarily a public meeting. That's not that. They asked the question, why isn't that on the list also? Because that's more of the veterans, the group that's there helping to run the place. And really, we're talking about hard infrastructure as opposed to adding activities and things to Veterans Park. But that'll be another park that's going to be on the list overall.
Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we take care of that ADA issues at Veterans Park? Because I remember it coming to the commission. And
Probably the sidewalks tweaking, but the ramps are too.
There are still some issues with ADA. We are working on those. There was some minor repairs done, but we do need to do a much broader, as Doc was saying, there is some other issues we have to deal with as well.
I think they shaved some of the sidewalks that are raising so the chairs can move, but
there are some slope issues that we have to deal with moving forward. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Okay, please.
Our next fund is the Transportation Capital Improvements Fund 303. For next year, we've added in there the Rhode Island extension, start up on this, the study regarding the extension. That's part of the existing just under $15 million of funding that's already in place. So this is actually putting it back on the budget. It's currently within the city funds as a reserve. Now we're putting $1 million of it into the budget for completing the study. Then we have Catalina Boulevard and Elkham Boulevard. Those are two items that are coming before you on Monday evening for a cost share agreement with the Florida Department of Emergency Management for 2 roadway elevations. So we want this is therefore will be part of next year's budget. We'll be approving the agreement with the state of Florida, but we're actually putting the funding for it in next year's budget.
As part of the funding that we got from FDEP or
Florida Department of Emergency Management, which is a pass-through from FEMA.
Okay. Doc, and then I'll go to Commissioner Caldwell. Can we not look at on Elkham possibly putting a bridge versus an elevation? You know, water is probably one of the hardest substances, and no matter how many times we elevate that road, if you drive down that road, there's almost, if you look at it from one angle, there's almost a 5-foot drop, you know, that goes continuously. Putting a bridge there, which somebody made a presentation sometime a year and a half ago or something like that, there's grants available that probably cost us a lot less money than elevating that road.
It's actually an item that's on the agenda for Monday, also to accept the funding to move forward with the study. So that could be one of the results that comes out.
Okay, I'll bring it up on Monday.
But yep, absolutely.
Got it. Go ahead, Commissioner Caldwell.
Same lines there, you know, I have some concerns about building a road up, elevating the road and creating a dam, so to speak, and backing the water up farther north when we get a severe storms as we did last year.
Well, they either way should have culverts underneath for the water to flow.
Running all that water into 2 60-inch culverts would create a backup, I think, a backflow and push the water out somewhere else, maybe even higher on the lake.
Yeah, I believe the culverts are there now currently. What we're losing is the road itself, possibly for months at a time because of the flooding. So if the road's elevated, it would be the same.
When the high water comes in, the water flows over the road naturally because that was a lake bed at one time.
Yes.
So by creating a dam there, aren't we going to push water further north into the lake?
I don't believe a dam. Anybody else have any info?
Yeah, it'll create the dam essentially because you're preventing the water from flowing over the road.
Correct.
But I've had a conversation.
If you're raising up, you're putting more culverts, you won't have the same, so the water's still gonna.
Yeah, I had this conversation with staff and with the stormwater engineer, and also with to talk about the Blue Way project that was looked at a long time ago. And so I think that there's the conversation is being had to overall increase the size of those culverts so that you could possibly get a canoe or a kayak through it if they can, to add that Blue Way component.
I think that was a discussion for Elcom.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Harrington.
Where do we stand with the Blue Way project? Do we have any updates? Is that being accounted for? Because to the mayor's point, if we focused on something like that, rather than taking a kayak through a culvert, it may be better to go under a bridge. I don't know if I want to risk running into an alligator in a culvert.
That's a good point.
Bridges are just entirely ridiculously expensive. I don't know how we would put a bridge in without acquiring property for.
So that's not entirely true. There are a lot of grants out there. We're looking at a call. I mean, if you want a nice fancy bridge that looks like Altamont, obviously it's going to be expensive, but a regular bridge with a sidewalk on each side, just think about how much money we're spending on sidewalks. How many times have we redone those sidewalks on Elcam?
Well, we're not doing the sidewalk. We're not talking about elevating Elcam. Which portion of Elcam are we talking about elevating? Because my understanding is that the portion of Elcam that we're talking about elevating is the portion closest to Howland.
So we're talking about Elcam where it floods,
Which is closest to Howland.
Yeah.
Which is closest to Howland. So in order to put a bridge there, you'd have to acquire property for an entrance and going up and going down, so.
Go ahead.
Phyllis Wallace, Public Works. LCAM has two sections that we have submitted to DEM for their consideration. One is between, for lack of a better word, between Montecito and Van Allen, not the entire section, but a portion of it. The other section is down near Oneida Court. Those were the two areas that we struggled with the flooding on for Ian, Nicole, and Milton. And for Catalina, it would be a section near Catalina and Sixma.
Yeah.
You know that not the whole entire road, it's just a section, just so that road does not flood and we are not impacted with having detours that took people sometimes 9 miles out of the way.
Oh, that's
to get through.
Yeah. Hi, that was me.
All right.
Okay. So moving on within our transportation, we made a few maps for you this year. So kind of show you where the projects are. So you have, Catalina Boulevard up there within District 1. Elcam is there in District 2. And then the Rhode Island extension is also in 2 as well. And we have the boundaries, so you can see in a nice little graphical representation where the projects are within transportation.
Hey, John, on that slide, I think you have 1 and 2 flipped. 2 should be 1, and 1 should be 2.
Could be. Okay, thank you. Then also as part of transportation improvement fund, again, road resurfacing is more of an R&R versus capital, but we do complete it within Fund 303, is we have the various roads to be resurfaced for next year. We have it split out for you by district, so you can see the recommended streets for next year.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez has a question, and then Commissioner Harrington.
Thank you. So Catalina, I see Catalina here for next year. We're going to be making some changes there as far as the bridge or whatever is it that's decided to be there. Are we holding off on the paving of the streets?
Those are different areas of Catalina?
So it's,
Yes.
oh, so that's on the side of where the new Catalina development is coming up?
Lake Helen Osteen?
It's on the north side of Catalina.
Yeah, but that's where, isn't that where the flooding takes place?
It'll be from there to Lake Helen Osteen, I believe.
But isn't that where the flooding is?
Well, we did have to shut down from Yorkshire down, so that may be what the confusion is, but the sections that are up there are outside of where we're proposing for the elevation. And obviously, if this elevation project proceeds and we get that positive thing, we will spend the money in the most prudent way where we're not duplicating efforts 6 months down the road or 12 months down the road.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harrington.
As we do the road resurfacing, are we building in, looking at the new crosswalks, potentially adding the colors, things like that? Is that being accounted for?
Absolutely, and Monday's the presentation will definitely give us some information how to move forward on that. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, we can continue. By the way, this is great information.
Yeah, thank you very much for the graphic picture.
This is great.
I would like to give a big shout out to Nicole and planning and GIS. She's worked very diligent with us these last couple of weeks, coming up with all different scenarios and formats, so we're very appreciative.
And Nicole's a new employee with the city just last few months.
Employee of the month.
I told her she was, outstanding, so, it went a long way.
You didn't put her outside, did you? Outstanding.
No.
You hear?
Bad joke.
No, ma'am, but when I did, I provided her with this presentation yesterday, so she was like, thank you for including me in this, so, it goes a long way.
Absolutely.
She is a resident of Deltona and is probably watching or listening, so she was going to.
Just asking, because it's nice if we get introduced to new staff that are working during commission meeting. It used to be done at one time. Thank you.
All right, let's continue.
Okay. Now we're switching over to Fund 402. Again, this is part of Monday night's present budget amendment as well, making sure that we're compliant with our bond docs and whatnot. We've split out the capital improvement element of water sewer back into Fund 402 the way it used to be. So again, these are all preliminary numbers. They've requested specifically these projects for next year. Part of the item for the Fisher plan, I want to point out, the $44 million is because we anticipate to get the actual agreement, and we need to just be able to show it within the budget so that it's there, and also the fact that it's going to be more than the $22 million receiving from the grant, looking at another $22 million in potential debt issuance. So those are all things that are being taken a look at by our rate consultant as they're putting together their rates for the next 5 years. So that's all included in there. We have other items going on at the Eastern Water Reclamation Plant, office design and construction of a dewatering building, the Fisher Plant chlorine relocation, various wells rehabs throughout the city, lift station rehabs throughout the city, continual rehab of our sewer collection system, continual water main replacement, and additional aquifer storage and recovery at the Alexander Rib site. So all of these, again, we want to put these out there so that as our rate consultants putting together their final recommendation that'll come to you in the July timeframe, that it's a feasible project in the eyes of the commission.
Perfect. Are you finished with that part?
Yes, sir.
All right, Commissioner Villa-Vasquez and Commissioner Howington.
Thank you, Mayor. So with the Fisher plant, any of this work that you're doing going to take care of that smell that comes up in the summer? You know what smell I'm talking about, huh?
Yes, I do, Commissioner. Jim Parrish, Deputy Utility Director. The smell normally that you receive usually happens after we have a large rainstorm, which kind of throws the biology of the plant off, which makes the odor. The particular type of plant that is being explored for the advanced waste treatment is the same exact treatment that we have at the Eastern, which does not produce the same type of issues whenever you have large rain events. So it should take care of those odor issues that we have.
I hope so. I mean, this is my second term, and since I got elected, this has been the biggest complaint of Providence Boulevard near this Fisher plant, especially in the summer.
Having a plant like that with such close proximity where residents are at can create that nuisance odor.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Howington.
I wanted to go back to the Fisher plant also. Can you elaborate a little bit on the agreement that you mentioned and how much of the 44 would be expected to be grant versus provided by the city, so we can kind of just get a breakdown of the idea of what the cost would
So whenever we went for appropriation funds for the design of the Fisher plant and then also for the design of the expansion for capacity at the Eastern plant, the contractor, the engineer of record that we're working with on Fisher, because of the tight window for any sort of funding, which happened, the window's already closed for it, they went out, which was Mead and Hunt, they went out and solicited for water quality improvement grants, and we were fortunate enough to receive, and we've received notification from DEP, that we did receive $22 million of funding for this plant. That is a grant for the construction portion of it. So not only do we have 50% grant for the design, permitting, and engineering, we also have 50% for construction as well.
So then does that mean that it would be 100% covered by grants? Or
No.
does
It's 50% covered up to $22 million for grant funds.
So would the city be then making up the additional 22? That's what I'm just trying to determine.
Correct.
Is what is the
And one of the things that John mentioned is that we have to show the entire $44 million because it's a reimbursable thing. So we pay the $44 million and we get reimbursed the $22 million.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, if we only show the project being $22 million, we're only going to get reimbursed 11. So we have to show the full potential of the plant expansion.
And part of the options that we have will be SRF loans. I think that's one of the options. So again, that's usually what you want to look at, the lowest interest rate available for our water, wastewater programs. So if we can't find additional grants, we'll definitely look to SRF before we look to other types of debt. But SRF usually is something you all have seen in the past, and it's something that we've, everyone uses it. You just hope to be able to get through that as quickly as possible.
And our engineer of record, Mead and Hunt, are very good at securing SRF funding if it's available.
I have one question. Have we ever thought about maybe acquiring some of the properties around the Fisher plant? I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone here has already, but I visited personally both the Eastern and the Fisher plant, and Eastern we walked right over the top and you could hardly smell anything, but when we visited Fisher,
Mayor, I think we did.
It's because it's a completely different process, meaning the biological process works in a different flow than what biological nutrient removal is, which is what we have at the Eastern facility. We're also exploring options as far as, that nuisance odor to be able to be taken care of with the plant improvements as well. So,
Jim, didn't we purchase one or two homes around there at one point to, I think something that we were doing with the Fisher plant, and we needed more room or space? Didn't we purchase?
No.
I think I remember approving.
At one point, there was the talk of one because there was a house that was available right across the street,
Right.
and there was a lot that was available. But those were not purchased by the city.
Okay.
But Jim, correct, the overall plan here is actually build an entirely new Fisher plant over at the RIB site.
I didn't want to give away that until we were totally fixated on it. But there are conversations with the engineer of record to actually move that plant over to the Alexander Avenue facility, which is a lot more acreage away from where the residents are.
Cat's out of the bag.
What's that?
Alexander, where?
Alexander Avenue, the RIB site that we have. It's at Alexander and Mobley.
I mean, it sounds to me like you're moving one smell to another area.
No,
to the residents. No.
We've got about 90 acres there.
Do you know where it is?
Yes, there's no
So
houses
you're
around.
moving from an area that's about 10 to 11 acres to an area that is, matter of fact, you can see it on the map right there. It's a very big facility. That green space right there.
Show Fisher now.
Fisher's down to the
right.
left, right in there.
In there.
Right there.
Is that of Doyle? like
No.
crossing Doyle, Alexander?
No, it's right there at Anderson, where Anderson and Alexander is. We have a 90-acre facility that's there. It backs up to Discovery Elementary.
Okay, I have to check it out.
And that would be that would still be a new plan anyways, correct? So,
It would be the new design that doesn't.
yeah.
It'd be the new design that
Okay.
that's where we have the stormwater augmentation. That's what that facility was originally built for the 4B, it was the 4A project. So the conversations we've had is to move the wastewater process over to the Alexander facility. That's still, of course, if DEP would approve, that move. So there's a lot of permitting requirements that we would have to meet to be able to do that. But so that's not 100% set in stone.
Understood.
I could talk about Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy if I want to ruin those. Cat's out of the bag.
For the Fisher plant, if we do move to the rib site, can we potentially look at doing something similar to like the nature area that they have out in Christmas?
What's that? I'm sorry.
The Orlando Wetland Park.
Yeah, can we look into doing something like the wetland park out towards Christmas where they've done some nature preserve areas around the facility?
For what's that for? I'm not understanding what
The
you're.
Orlando Wetland Park, they use it as a surface water. They essentially take the wastewater, clean it, filter it through a wetland system, and then release it into the St. John's down by Highway 50.
We would have to have discussions with St. John's on that to be able to use any sort of wetland area.
Well, they've also opened it as a
Discharge.
nature center that's available to the public for hiking and things like that. So I'm just wondering if we're doing a design, if we can look into options that might be available to help utilize the property in more than just one way.
Yeah, any time that you have any sort of expansion or anything like that, you have to have effluent disposal. DEP requires that you have an equal amount of effluent disposal as what you're actually going to be processing. So we definitely can look into that. We have to have a method to get it there. So you're talking about the cost of the piping and so forth, land for any sort of mitigation or any sort of effluent disposal. We can certainly look at that.
Great, thank you.
Let's continue.
So our stormwater capital improvement, CIP, for next year, we have identified 2 projects, the citywide drainage pipe rehab and the pond GC4 water quality improvements. Those 2 projects add up to $1.2 million. Per our current rate study that was presented to the commission last year, this is roughly how much money we have available to us for capital and CIP projects for next fiscal year. That's basing it also, we'll talk about the current fee versus proposed fee for stormwater for next year in an upcoming slide, but this is what we currently have available next year. Okay.
Quick question, Mayor, I'm sorry. Oh, where's he going? Oh.
So you just mentioned a rate schedule that was presented last year. And I know in my meeting yesterday, we discussed that there was an option to look towards increasing by $20 every single year for stormwater costs.
That is correct.
Is that the rate?
Yes, ma'am. I have an entire slide on that coming up. I can move to it now, seeing we're here.
And so,
While we're here, let's make sure we get Commissioner.
available assets, yes. So if we're going to be increasing by the 1.2 each year, will we have specific projects tied to each one of those $20 increases each year? Or how are we going to be managing that if we have it set up as a rate schedule where we intend to increase? Because I believe that the intention is to eventually get to the maximum rate that we can increase to over the years?
Yes, ma'am. As presented last year, the maximum rate to go to would be $250 annually. So this $1.2 million, as you're increasing it every year, obviously your O&M is going up, your salary and benefits are going up. So the $1.2 million per year is pretty steady until, and actually if you go to the last page of your tab 6, it specifically shows that for fiscal year 25-26, there's $1.2 million in 26-27 and 27-28, 1.5. 2829 and 2930, there's $2 million available. So when you look at those out-year fundings, you can see that on the master 5-year CIP, the funding, the use of the funding is far greater than the money coming in. So in speaking with the department director, the city manager, and deputy, more than likely we would have to look at a debt issuance so that we can go in and do a massive projects up front and then pay for it over time with the revenues coming in from the stormwater fee. We currently do that already. We have debt outstanding for prior year projects, so it's very common to either use a combination of debt or a lot of municipalities, and Deltona, no different, has utilized general fund monies to fund projects as well. So, just in 26-27 alone, there's close to $16 million in recommended projects with available resources of $1.5 million.
Okay. Now I'm going to address something that I know everybody hates to hear me talk about, but impact fees. Obviously, we are putting these increases, which over several years will end up being fairly significant, because I believe we're about 180 and we're going to about 250 over the next few years. So when we do this, how soon are we going to be looking at our impact fees to ensure that the new developments are being accounted for? Because we all know that as we cover our land, we have more and more water issues, which are driving more requirements for new water projects, which should be being paid by the new development that's coming into our community. So what is our plan, rather than just putting this cost on our residents' backs, to actually shift this to the new development that is actually impacting our community?
Yes, ma'am. So on Monday night, as part of the budget amendment, I've placed $60,000 for a rate study for municipal impact fees. And speaking with various firms, we're looking at a 6 to 9 month window for the study to be completed. So we're currently working on a scope of services so that we can solicit quotes, or if the anticipated amount exceeds $100,000, then that will be a competitive solicitation. It's not required by our purchasing policy, but I had a consensus given to me a couple of meetings ago that to put this out on the street. So that's what we're working on. I just got to work with procurement staff and the departments to make sure we have appropriate scope of services.
Okay, thank you.
You're
That's all I
welcome.
have.
Commissioner Avila-Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. So I know that in my district, when I drive around during rainy season and stuff like that, the right-of-ways are always flooded. And sometimes I stop and there is a drainage, but it's all clogged with the, grass clippings, whatever residents, blow out from there. So is there a plan in here to help? Because that is part of stormwater.
Yes, ma'am. So that's part of the overall maintenance of the city stormwater drainage system. So I'll defer to Public Works on that response.
It could, okay.
I just personally, I do not know the schedule for the various.
Your staff gets out as often and as frequently as they can. As you just mentioned, Commissioner, we do struggle with our residents who don't want clippings on their property, so they blow them out into the road. That not only gets into the stormwater system, it gets into the swales. It creates a hazard for motorcycles that are out there. We try to do the education with our residents. We can certainly enhance that and kind of ask our residents when a storm is coming. If they see something, try to go out there and clean it up, because we can't be everywhere. We just don't have the staff in which to be across 47 miles of the city of Deltona. But anytime we get a call about something, we look forward to those calls, because our residents know quicker than we do something that's not right in their neighborhood, and we will dispatch people immediately to get eyes on it and take care of that situation as quickly as possible.
Thank you, because that is an issue, and I try to, when they tell me things, I try to tell the residents, right away, even though it belongs to the city, it's your responsibility to maintain it free of debris and stuff like that. So I'm glad you second that comment. Thank you.
Phyllis, do we have an actual schedule, like right before a storm? Something that we can look at for certain areas, like when we're, doing to make sure like the drainage fields are all unclogged? Do we have like a scheduled maintenance?
We do have a schedule. It goes by sectors
Okay.
for everything that we do, but we also know those areas that the rain just seems to want to
Yeah, we
focus
can't
on that
control that,
area. We all know some of those areas, Elkham and Lake Helen Osteen, so we kind of dispatch in advance if we think a storm's coming. And something that you may not know is the majority of your stormwater staff and Public Works lives here, and you have staff that will get out on their own time and check things out. So we do the best that we can, but we do need the help of our residents as well. If there's something clogging out there, just a simple raking it out of the way is certainly helpful. Not leaving piles out there for the garbage men to pick up on yard waste. Put your piles in a bag so that it doesn't get distributed all along the roadway and into the system.
I just want to give our residents that peace of mind. Obviously, we can't be, like you said, everywhere at all times, right? But if residents do see an area of concern, they can definitely report it to us, so we
Yes.
can put eyes on it, because I know last storm, we had one or two areas. They called me. I know I called the city manager, and obviously I CC'd Public Works in it, and you guys were out there right away.
Yes, sir.
So I think that's important, residents. So if they see something, just report it, and staff will definitely take care of it.
See something, say something. I know
Yeah.
that's not quite in this environment, but hurricane season will be starting here in just a couple of weeks, and it becomes a very heightened sense of urgency, so.
I got to tell you that one of my residents, I told him there was flooding in their right-of-way, and I asked him, if you walk down further, you'll see that there's a drainage at the end, and he did clean it up. He did sort of lower the grass, and he said to me, "Thank you so much." I mean, the water just, as soon as he cleaned up, of course, 3 neighbors got together and they did it. As soon as they cleaned that up, the whole flooding just, rushed down the, so it does work. It does work.
And it has to be, it's mutually beneficial to everybody. It's mutually beneficial to our residents, our business owners, and as well as staff if we work as a team, because, more hands makes it much easier for everybody to stay ahead of things.
Correct. Commissioner Howington, then Vice Mayor Harriet.
No, I'm good.
Can we share the stormwater schedule, the maintenance schedule, so that maybe online, kind of like we're doing with the building permits and things like that, so that people know or have
Sure, we can
access?
definitely work on getting that out there. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. Let's continue, please.
Okay. So, Mayor, moving on now to our capital replacement equipment. The first thing that I want to just point out is that everything that you see on here for capital replacement for equipment and vehicles is in accordance with our current vehicle replacement policy. That is an administrative policy that was concurred by City Commission on the November 23rd of 2015 Commission meeting. So just so that we have all that we're keeping within the schedule. The other thing that we did on this is we took a look with fleet to make sure that even though it might have complied with the 10-year replacement window, that if it was still in good condition, both mechanically and aesthetically, looking to push it off. So we have met numerous times with fleet and departments to make sure that everything on this list is needed to be replaced. So we've also split it up. If you go to the next couple of pages, we also have in here the funding. So of the vehicles and equipment, $3.2 million is from the general fund, $290,000 from water wastewater, $425,000 from the stormwater utility fund. The general fund is 100% funded for replacement as well as water wastewater. We're just looking to see where the final numbers come in from for stormwater, because either that will need to be either potential capital lease or potential funding from the general fund in order to maintain that replacement cycle, because as I stated previously, we have $1.2 million. So we're taking a good look at that. The other thing that I just want to point out is that we do utilize various existing contracts, whether through the sheriff's bid, Sourcewell, et cetera, but also as we get this, if we need to look at our basic white fleet, looking at the local preference that y'all stated. Any specialty equipment is obviously, it's much cheaper to get it right off the particular contracts, and a lot of our local vendors are a part of those contracts. So we always take a look there. Other things that we've taken a look at too is the fact that when we look at a fire engine, replacement, that's not something that we can just go down the street and procure. So we also have to make sure that when we're looking at fire engines, transports, brush trucks, et cetera, some of those have long lead times. The fire engine that we just received a few weeks ago, we actually ordered that back in 21. So it's taken a long time for this equipment to get here. Other than that, I have nothing else, Mayor, on the fleet and capital.
Vice Mayor Harriet.
Can you share with us the, not now, but can you send us the statistics on the vehicles being replaced, please?
Absolutely. If you look in tab 7 of the binder that we put out, we gave it to you in 3 different formats. I gave it to you by fund. I gave it to everybody by maintenance acquisition cost.
Oh, yeah.
I want to just kind of point out that we have vehicles that we have spent close to 183% of acquisition costs and maintenance. So, that's something that we also want to take a look at, in the fact that once it reaches around 75%, that's another little index that, we need to add to our replacement policy, because, the current policy has mileage, hours, but we also need to add a component in there on maintenance to acquisition costs. So we'll be amending that administrative policy as a result of the meetings we've had. So I wanted to make sure you had that. And then we also gave it to you by age. So the average age of what is actually looked to be replaced for next year, even though our policy says 10, we're closer to 15 years. So, we do stretch the vehicles out here in the city long past the 10-year mark, but that's our guide in case, we do need to replace it, it's there. So, and then the very last couple of sheets within tab 7 is our entire fleet, to include vehicles and equipment. So that's one of the things that we're looking at from the budget team, as well as the fleet department, to make sure that we have everything in the appropriate life schedule for replacement. And that's something that by the time we come to you in June, everything that we've started these last couple of months, we'll have it in more detail of exact what kind of funding. I know I said to a couple of you last week, even though we have a capital replacement program, we looked at, what it cost back then. It used to be when you bought a new vehicle, you could add 2-3% a year. I know we spoke the other day, is that, in 21, I was buying police vehicles completely outfitted for $43,000 to $44,000. Last year, it cost me, $75,000 for the same vehicle, just 4 years newer. So, that's the reality of what vehicles are costing us. I remember fire engines back in 21, I was doing, POs for $450,000. Costs of just, we can't keep up with it. So, that's where we have to truly look at what we have set aside for capital replacement to see if that's the method we should utilize. I would tell you that my prior financial advisor at my prior city actually made the statement that, vehicles under 100,000 need to, be switched to pay-as-you-go, versus vehicles that or $100,000 or more should actually be looked to be debt financed. The outcome's the same, whether you set aside today for replacement from 10 years from now, because you have to come up with an assumed rate of return, or you just pay interest on a loan. So you still come out roughly the same, either method you use. It's just that it's hard to set aside what those resources are going to be. Okay.
Commissioner Vila Vasquez?
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to give a shout out to Chief Schneider, because I believe this is one of the vehicles that we knew that we were not going to get it immediately. It was going to be a few years before we got it, but if he had waited, we would have paid double. So buying it early, 4 years ahead of time, we saved a lot of money. Is that the vehicle, Chief, the fire truck or the ambulance that we purchased, but we had to wait for it a couple of years?
Yes, our agents are taking anywhere from 2 to 3 years at least now to.
Right. So even staff on their side is always keeping an eye open to save the city money. So this was a good purchase from their side.
And I'll just also point out, if you recall from the procurement policy that was just approved in March, is we actually put in there that vehicles that have a long lead time, we might need to bring them forward to get permission to order them. So, it doesn't really have a real budget impact today, because we put it off for a future year encumbrance, but it does give us the ability, if we do know there's a long lead time, that vehicles that need to be replaced 4 years from now, we're actually going to have to look at, next year's budget or the following year's budget to actually get those orders put out there. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Then we have miscellaneous equipment. So one of the things that we did in putting this one together is, again, because we will not know what our true funding availability is until late June to late July, we went out there with the departments and we asked what the priority was. So if it's a high priority, it needs to make next year's budget. If it's a medium year priority and money comes in short, then that would simply be, we would look to put that off until mid-year to see if there's monies that were left over from the prior year. And if it's low, it doesn't mean that we don't need it. It just means that it would be pushed off to the following fiscal year. And then the following fiscal year, that would more than likely become a high priority. So that's where the high, medium, low comes into place. So everything, again, for the general fund, we have the appropriate funding from the available prior year fund balance to fund. We just have to look at stormwater, water, wastewater. Okay?
Commissioner Vila Vasquez?
Quick question, Jonathan. The citywide water meters, are we finished installing the new water meters, or is this something just putting in stock replacements in case some need to be replaced?
For the water meter project that we have from Vanguard to replace all of the meters, we're down to about 3,500 meters that are left to go. So we probably within the next 2 months, we're going to have everything replaced. This particular line here for water meters is for any new meters that go in. So say, for example, we have some new houses that are built, we have new developments that come in. We have to have those items in stock. However, those items are also dealt with impact fees and with the portions whenever there's new connections. But this is for stock items that we have to have for those new developments.
There's offsetting revenues to.
Correct, absolutely.
Perfect.
Commissioner Arlington?
Yeah, I was going to ask, because I know that when my house was built 2 years ago, they put in an old water meter and then immediately put in a new one within about 6 months, which
Right.
seemed inefficient. And so who's actually paying for those costs when they build a new RPUD? We have a lot of housing subdivisions that are trying to come in. Is that our
comes
job
through-
to install those, or is that the developer?
We do the installations. However, it's funded through impact fees.
And we won't have any more issues where we're putting in an old meter and then changing it out 6 months later?
Correct, because the way that this project went was based upon the billing cycles for a particular area. So whenever that project was moving through your area, whenever it was first built, we weren't into that portion of the project. The project actually started after your development was put in. So that's why it kind of goes in phases, because it's based upon the billing cycles for that particular area.
Thank you.
And I'll point out, Mayor, too, the rate study being done by GovRates also includes miscellaneous fees and impact fees. So that, again, is something that looking at to make sure that we are capturing the full cost of putting in a meter at a new residence.
Vice Mayor Harriet.
The, Jim, while you're up there, the other portion of the water meter project where we put in the receivers or the
residential dual check backflows, yes.
is that, no, the system that reads the smart water meter? Mm-hmm. Okay, so where are we on that?
Okay, so that project we approved at one of the prior commission meetings. This past week, we had our kickoff meeting with Ferguson and with Neptune.
Perfect.
So that's in the works. So we should be completed within the next 6 months and have it on the AMI radio towers. However, as I mentioned before, the portal for the residents to be able to access all of that information comes after we get that network up. So we're looking at probably around October, November for the portal to be accessible by residents.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And the Tyler Munis portion of that project is actually on Monday night's agenda meeting as part of mid-year. So everything has to tie together. So, we have that funding upcoming for your approval.
I tell you, I feel a lot more comfortable now that we have staff that knows everything that's going on. I don't feel like anything's fallen through the cracks lately. So thank you, guys.
Go ahead, John.
Okay.
John, one thing, just to mention in reference to GovRate, that studies will be finished earlier, so we want to provide the commission that date when we believe, and I know it's rough, because those impact fees will be brought to them earlier than the other impact fees, just because the study's been underway since about January,
Yes,
or maybe
ma'am.
earlier.
Yeah, earlier than that. And when we do have those dates, we will also be through our monthly utility bill, putting out that public notice of when the discussion for rates as required by law.
Cool.
Okay. Then our next portion is enhancement request. An enhancement is something that's not in the current year budget. It's something that's above and beyond our current levels of service. So these are various things that staff has recommended. One of the things that I want to point out, every one of them is important, but I want to point out that the Tyler Munis ERP cloud migration, Tyler actually came to meet with us a couple of weeks ago, stating that their premise, how they do business, is focusing more to the cloud versus premise. So this cost of $800,000, it's not just that that's additional, but then there's also costs that we have internal already that goes towards Tyler, so that when we come back to you in June, we'll be able to share with you what the offsetting cost is that would no longer be a part of if we move towards the cloud. Also, the sandbag storage. If y'all recall, y'all approved the sandbag machine a couple of meetings ago. I hear it's really a cool apparatus. Keon, Tori, and I are going to go out there and do it for Phyllis for a while. So, but now that we're talking about pre-staging things, we now need to have a storage shed for them, so so that once they're pre-staged and it rains, they don't get too wet that they're too heavy to handle. So again, talking about the fact that stormwater funding, this is slated for the general fund to pay for, because again, we feel that's part of the emergency management side of the house as well. So paying for it out of the general fund is more than appropriate. Then all the various other items in there, the fiber initiative, so that we can be able to connect various city facilities on high-speed internet versus Keon, Tori, and I still use dial-up. We just want to make sure it's a lot faster to communicate between the facilities. Are there any questions on anything up here?
Vice Mayor Harriet.
Thank you. When you spoke about the Tyler Munis item, it sounds like we're going to have some offsetting costs that will be coming off. Does that, now that we're going to the cloud, what is going to be the annual cost? moving forward?
That is what we're currently working on with them. As you're aware of, we're doing quite a few enhancements in-house between finance, HR, utility billing, planning, et cetera, fire. Pretty much every department within the city is currently doing items. So Tyler Munis has to go in and look at all of that so that they put the appropriate schedule together. Subscription-based is not new. If you can no longer buy a lifetime, Microsoft Office, so this is just the way all software companies are going. One of the first things that, I want to just, maybe dispel is I had Tyler Munis previously in the cloud, and except for a time where there was a Microsoft and AWS outage, we never had an issue of continuity on day-to-day operations. So moving to the cloud on our ERP solution, I'm not worried in the least bit.
Excellent. And then on the sandbag storage, is that going to be like a full-on building, or are we looking at like an awning system that could then house more equipment?
Basically, the way it was stated to me, and they can speak up, is basically 2 big carports back to back with sides on them.
Awesome.
Perfect. Commissioner Villa-Vasquez.
I don't know if this question is, for here or towards you, but with all this upgrading with the IT department, with the fiber and the cloud, is there a plan for disaster recovery and testing?
Yes, ma'am. A lot of the information under the new standards, we're not really supposed to elaborate what our backbone is. The IT director can come up here, but because of cybersecurity, those type of conversations are not typically had in the open anymore.
Right. I was just asking, is there a plan
Yes,
for
ma'am.
disaster recovery testing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
John, thank you very much for not putting that sensitive information out there.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, John.
Okay. Other enhancement requests, so we just have a couple of other items regarding fleet, stormwater, and water wastewater. One of the things that I want to just kind of point out with fleet, most people might not know, but we have a phenomenal fleet department here within the city. They pretty much handle everything from normal routine maintenance, PMs, major overhauls, et cetera, unless it is a warranty item or something that's just beyond our capacity. Everything's done in-house. I know a question was asked about alignment machine, everything else like that. We just don't have enough vehicles to justify the cost to have an alignment machine when, you go to, I just had an alignment yesterday. When they're doing, 20, 30 a day, when we might do 1 to 2, it just doesn't, there's no cost benefit there. So again, maintaining our fleet equipment goes a long way. The slope mower, I've said it already about stormwater. That's why we have that as a low priority, is it's needed by the department, but if we cannot come up with the funding, then it would be pushed off a year and become a high priority in the future year. And I want to give a big shout out to the utility department in the fact that when they brought this enhancement to us, they're going out there right-sizing the fleet. They have they have individuals that are out there driving big utility box trucks when they could potentially be driving F-150s or a Maverick, something like that. So Mr. Parrish and Glenn, they're really looking at right-sizing the fleet. And the reason why this is an enhancement and not a replacement is we have more than one vehicle that is doubled up with manpower in it, and that these 8 additional vehicles would be to allow people to split up and not have to drive together so that we can go handle potentially items, lift station maintenance, well maintenance, when it only requires one person to do it and multiple people are out there doing it, so we can do our maintenance on a quicker basis.
Vice Mayor Harriet.
John, is the slope mower, is that something, I see it's a low priority, but is that something that could also be accomplished with the Minzy muck truck? Because I know that has a mowing feature and all kinds of other things?
The answer is yes, but then that Menzie muck is a little slower to get from point A to point B. So if you have a slope mower that's more designed for that versus getting down into ditches, it just, again, helps to get our stormwater conveyance system maintained much quicker with the additional pieces of equipment, and the fact that we have, contractors that are, assisting, our staff to get work done. That just gives us more tools in the bag to get the job done.
Go ahead, John.
Okay. And here's the total enhancement request by fund. I can tell you that if y'all concur with the enhancements within the general fund, we have enough money from prior year reserves to fund it. Fleet is funded by an allocation of all operating funds based on the fleet by department. Stormwater utility, we've talked about it. Water, wastewater, again, have to look at where our rate study comes in. But once this is done and we get a preliminary nod to move forward with them, then all of this goes to the rate consultant towards their plan. Okay, so the affordable housing, why this is up here is it was brought to my attention when we were doing the budget process that back in 2022, the AHAC recommended that the city reserve 1% of its annual budget to facilitate and establish a community land trust as part of their annual report. Then we found that in '24, they amended it. It didn't have the actual statement to set aside 1% of the annual budget. It just made the statement that it's highly recommended that they set aside money per their 2022 report. So I wanted to just bring that to the commission to see what the guide was as we're building this year's budget so that we make sure we hit the appropriate targets. So we put together a couple of options. So in my opinion, this committee, it's kind of hard for them to say the entire city budget. Because you can't really set aside, well, the city commission can absolutely set the money aside, but it's not typical that you would set aside 1% of water, stormwater, solid waste,
Yes.
Building, et cetera, that it's typically, when you set up a land trust, it's typically based off the general fund. So my recommendation would be that if we're going to set aside 1%, it would be based upon the tax proceeds from ad valorem. Because we have so many revenue streams that come into the general fund that are restricted for certain items only. So where you have complete utilization of the funds is on the ad valorem side. So my recommendation would be, if we're going to adhere to the recommendation to create a community land trust, then I would do it based off the taxable value. So at our $5.1 billion taxable value at 7 mills, that brings in just under $36 million, less than 95% that I'm supposed to do, so a little over $34 million. Less the portion that we have to transfer to the CRA as part of the tax increment, and debt service related to the general fund that was based off of ad valorem as being the funding source. That would mean that there's $333,000 that could be set aside as part of this community land trust. If you were to do it based off of what their recommendation was, the citywide budget nets down to $1 million. If you look at the entire general fund budget, less debt service contingencies, transfers out, et cetera, it's just under $600,000. So this is to look to buy, as was said earlier, land for the future. So if you're going to do it, I think that doing it this way is the least questionable methodology. That's just my opinion.
Vice Mayor Harriet?
This land trust, are we looking at this for
Affordable housing.
affordable housing, for high-density development, essentially?
I would defer that to Jordan back there.
That's a good question.
Can you repeat the question, Vice Mayor?
What kind of affordable housing, what would this money be used for? Like what types of projects, how would this money be used?
The intent is not for high-density multifamily, it's more for single-family.
Okay, so it would be more of a, like a buy and refurbish type project where we would buy houses, refurbish the houses, sell them for no profit for as affordable housing?
Correct. That's one option. Also to acquire land as well.
Okay.
And do the land lease.
Okay. Thank you, Jordan.
I had a comment to that. So to clarify the definition of affordable housing is not, and I'm not making this comment as disrespect to Section A. Affordable housing, you have to qualify for a mortgage, and you have to pay whatever the mortgage amount is. You get no help from the government as opposed to Section A.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think that a lot of us here qualify are right around the AMI or within the 110% or whatever it is of the AMI. So it's not Section 8. It's a much larger discussion.
It's right. You have to qualify for a mortgage. You have to have an income and qualify for a mortgage. And if you see the chart that's put together by the state, not the city, you would wonder how in the world can it be called affordable housing, because it is not affordable.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. That's a good clarification. And also, this is right along the track that Mr. Smith mentioned was what I was thinking of, my preference for affordable, attainable, whichever buzzword we want to use, housing, where it's not sectioned off. It's amongst the community. You can't say at no point will a child get picked on because they live in an area that is affordable housing.
Identified as.
Yeah. So.
Right.
Infill lots. It's spread amongst the community. You can't identify it from the neighbor.
Yeah. One of the things that I know myself when I speak to developers is I try to get them to include affordable housing in their projects. Haven't been lucky, but that's one of the projects that I would have loved or still continue to hope to see as part of developments and stuff like that.
Commissioner Howington.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez, I don't want to put you on the spot, but when you look at this, with your experience with AHAC, out of the recommendations and the options that are presented to us, would you have a preference based on your knowledge, your communication and participation?
I think the recommendation is fair, and I'm looking over to my shoulder because Commissioner Colwell is my backup, and we represent the state.
Right.
I represent the state, so that's Commissioner Colwell. I think recommendation from the staff is fair, and I know that Jordan was part of this, so I don't think Jordan will lead us down the wrong path. So I think it's fair.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, considering that we have nowhere to build affordable housing at the moment,
right?
And those would be our next option, hopefully. But I think we have to be re-educated as far as what land lease really is. So
right. Yeah, I think that's a great option we can look at in the future, and I love the idea of info lots. So thank you. I value your opinion. That's why I wanted to get your input. Thank you.
And this
staff
would
did a
be
really good job.
And Mayor, this would be an annual amount, so Jordan and I would probably just come back and bring a resolution so that that's in place, so that it makes the statement if option one or the staff recommendation is what everyone agrees to, then we would just want to probably memorialize it with legal in a resolution.
And that would be 1% annually, not so as ad valorem increases, it would also.
That is correct. That is correct. And you could all, again, it's a recommendation, so you could always statement that 333,000 annually, or 350,000, or 300. I mean, you could just do it as a flat amount if you wanted. Again, it's a recommendation, but you're correct. As ad valorem's increase, then the amount going into it would increase as well.
Got it.
That is correct.
And also, just to piggyback on your question, currently, we do, the local board, they do buy homes and they refurnish them and sell them as affordable housing, around the city of Deltona.
All right.
Yeah. Now, would y'all want us to, obviously, there would be a restriction on the usage, but would you want us to also put it in a max? So, if we collect money for 5 years and we now have $2 million and there's been no land available to purchase, do you want us to put a ceiling in the amount that we would collect?
Yeah, I think 3.
I think, and I'll get to you, Vice Mayor Harriet, but I think we probably should also consider revisiting this subject every 3 to 4 years or something like that. Vice Mayor?
I'd like to see us revisit it every year, just for the discussion. And then also something, I think a 3 years collection, if we've collected 3 years worth of 1% and we haven't bought any properties, or we're still carrying a large balance, we need to. Yeah.
I just think every year maybe it's a little too much. If you think about 300,000, that's not, in some cases, not even a house. So to not put too much stress on staff, I would recommend, just as a suggestion, maybe every 2 to 3 years. So at least there's some funds in there and we can have an idea of what we're using. I mean, staff can always come back and give us a couple options,
It has to come back for the budget process.
Yeah.
Right, so we can also bring it when Jordan and his crew bring in the report, we can talk about it then, and then it can then fall into the budget process, makes things a little kind of smoother at that point.
Yeah, because it's, in my thought process, it goes along with this workshop annually, because it's money set aside for acquisition.
Right, and FYI, we have state meetings quarterly, and I can tell you Deltona is the only city that does not have affordable housing. So it's a shame, when I have nothing to report on Deltona. So.
Go ahead, John.
Okay. Mayor, would you mind if we take a 5-minute break?
Let's go ahead and make it a 10-minute break, and that way everyone can use the restroom.
Thank you.
So we'll reconvene at, I can't see that watch, it's
30 after.
10:40. on track. All right, John, we're ready for you.
Yes, Mayor.
Vice Mayor, you know you're gonna clean that spot, right?
Wait, what is that?
I don't know. I'm sure it's great for my sugar, though.
That's going to be your new nickname.
Oh, I thought it was bobblehead. Oh. We're the tag team. We got to schedule it again. We do the diabetes, we do a diabetes town hall every year, so. Type 1, type 2, so bring awareness.
Finally, I'm first.
Listen, I'm almost pre-diabetic, so I'm reversing mine. Go ahead, John.
Okay,
Sorry,
Mayor.
Got sidetracked.
On the odd chance,
All right, guys. Come
on
on.
the odd chance that my wife is listening to this, which I highly doubt,
I won't say you were back there eating all the stuff you were eating.
but I want to tell her happy 29th anniversary today. So we both got married we've got married at 10, so, but no, I just want to, so anyway. Now, Mayor, we're going to kind of change. We've talked about CIP. We've talked about capital outlay. We've talked about enhancements. Now we need to talk about how do we pay for everything?
Go ahead.
I'm glad I can get a laugh out of paying. So anyway, so as y'all, I've said this several times today. We're ongoing with a wastewater rate study that should be completed here in the next 2 months. We will make sure that the appropriate public notice goes out to all of our utility customers so that they know that it's coming up. So if that gets approved, then obviously the budget book that gets distributed in August will be based on those fees, so that when we come for the public hearing in September, then that budget is based on those fees. The fees would be implemented based on current practice October 1st. So any bills that would go out after October 1st would have the new rates built into it. We're looking at the review of our building permit fees and all of our miscellaneous fees. Those fees, once they go in, we have to, set everything, get everything within our fee schedule set up. Those fees would more than likely, we would recommend going into effect January 1st of 2026.
Give me one, John, I don't mean to interrupt you. Joyce, can we make sure some of the people that want to speak can't push the button? So. Try to go out and go back in.
This is why we need the fiber upgrade, because we're still on dial-up in the chamber.
Okay. Go ahead, John. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No worries, Mayor.
In the meantime, if you want to speak, just put up your. Go ahead, John.
Then we're looking at the impact fees. So, I already talked about, the fact that we're implementing that. Then we would if we get the study later this year, then we need to give time for Jordan to work with the developers and contractors so that they can get the word out there over impact fees. If it comes back that the impact fees exceed the threshold allowed by law to increase in 1 year, then we also have to build into the account that it might require a 3-year phase-in period. And I don't have that written in front of me, but I forget the percentage. If the fees increase, you're required by law to phase it in over 3 years. So,
Isn't that a requirement?
Yeah.
I think we're all on the board.
No, hold on. Let him finish. When he's done, then we go over the questions.
so that's where we are with our current fee study, not assessment studies or anything like that, just existing fee studies. That's all I have on this topic, Mayor.
All right. So on the board is Vice Mayor Harriet, then Commissioner Howington.
Commissioner Howland. No, you go ahead. Let's stick with the fifth order.
So So I wanted to ask about the timing, because we have an exception. We have not increased these fees in 10 years. So with that, we are not held to the constraint of the slow rolling of increasing our fees because we have the exception. So it was confirmed to me by Zach that we can actually do a full increase based on what is recommended from the studies. So I want to make sure that we are focused on that rather than doing the multi-year implementation, because this is a problem. Our infrastructure is failing and having issues, and we're not keeping up with the new development. So we want to make sure that we capture as much of the impact fees immediately. I'm concerned because I keep hearing conversations saying, well, we can't exceed the cap. Well, the cap doesn't apply to us because we are an exception. Many communities across Florida are dealing with this right now, and they are getting exceptions because they are in the same exact position as us. So we have some that are going up 3 times what their current rates are. So I just want to make sure that
I only play an attorney on Sundays, so I will discuss it with Zach, only because, again, that's the portion of the statute that I see, and again, I'm not an attorney, but if there's an exception, then absolutely, Zach would tell us what we can and can't do.
yes, please just make sure that that stays on the radar and that we focus on the exception because we don't want to drag it out.
So Zach and Gemma are definitely involved when we send out the information we get. So they will stipulate the proper way that we're expecting the exception to be considered by the additional, or by like the vendors that we're looking at, or the consultants in this situation. So
Thank you.
we definitely work back with them on that.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Harriet, do you still want to say something?
Yeah, I did. Thank you for Commissioner Howington for bringing that up. That was something that I also wanted to mention. The other thing I'd like to mention, or I'd like to ask staff to look into, is our user fees. So for our fees for our parks and for all the services that we provide, if we can just take a look at those and make sure that they are reflective of what goes into that. So
that is also part of Monday night's budget. So that's being looked at as well. And we've actually, Dana in my office and has been working with every department, putting together a master fee schedule so that we can bring everything, instead of this individual, this reso, that reso, it will be one reso that we look at annually.
Perfect.
And to the mayor's comment earlier, it actually puts into there that, you know, the reso would be set that this requires an annual review on these fees and, you know, 3 years on these fees, you know, so that it's set in stone for future staff to know when they're to do things as well. So that's all built into that fee schedule, sir.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Moving on to our special assessments. So last year, the rate consultant came in so that we would, by fiscal year 2029, have a maximum $250 per year stormwater fee. One of the things that staff, we looked at these last couple of months is that for next year, it was stated to go from 170 to 200. So we took a look at it because it makes it easier for people to plan if you had a set amount per year. So our staff recommendation, after speaking with Gov Rates, was to do 20, so that by 29 we got to $250 annually. So that's, you know, then when we send the letter out in June, we're in the past, we've always sent a letter out every year. The letter that's been drafted for this June would stipulate that the maximum we could go to without further, you know, distribution would be $250 per year. What that does is, you know, I haven't looked at the fee here, but when I did this in my previous employer, which we had 10,000 or less parcels, the postage alone for that letter is just under $20,000. So it's probably about $25,000, $30,000 here. So we, instead of doing that annually, we would just capture it in one letter through 2029, and it's very clear in the letter that looking at $20 a year, maximum of $250, and we've also drafted it such that spells out the benefits that the public gets as a result. We talk about the number of miles of drainage ditch, the number of ponds, so that they see that there is a cost involved in maintaining the stormwater conveyance system. Okay. Did y'all have
Commissioner Howington has a question. Okay, go ahead.
So in general, would y'all be comfortable with us reducing it to $20 increase versus the $30 for next fiscal year?
That's a yes for me, but Commissioner Avila-Vasquez, you had a question on this specific?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I think I caught at the end, you will be notifying the residents once a year of the increase for the mailing?
We currently do it every time that we increase it. We're allowed by law to do one letter that encapsulates all future years that was based off of a rate study. So seeing that we had a rate study completed that stated that it was $250 per year by 2029, and it specified the reasons why, we could do one letter to save us immensely versus doing a single letter every year for the next 4 years.
120,000.
That's correct. So we can, instead of spending 120,000, I could spend probably 20 to 25,000 somewhere in there to capture at one time.
Okay, so if you have a new resident that moves in within the middle of those years, how are we going to notify them?
Then when they come into the building department to get their building permits or whatnot, they hand it out, and it's on our website. We have everything would be spelled out on our websites and any brochures that are handed out, and we could actually have within, now that customer service will be here within the building, we could even make sure that we have the letter that we distribute readily available for anyone that comes in the building when they establish a new account.
So we have a mail out in the water bills.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know, I just kind of feel that one letter for 5 years or 4 years, it's a little bit...
I cannot include the stormwater bill or message within the water sewer bill. It has to be sent to all parcel owners' addresses that own property within the city limits of Deltona. The other thing, though, is I point out in that, seeing that the majority of our citizens, out of 40,000 parcels, 25,000 parcels are single-family residents with a homestead exemption. So that means the overwhelming majority of our property owners are full-time residents. So it doesn't preclude us from putting in my past preference has always been anytime that we're talking about any type of changes in fees for water, sewer, stormwater, solid waste, I give a cursory message on the utility bill so that our customers are aware of it. So so even though we might only send one letter out, there would be some kind of notice that we would put into the utility bill.
Yeah, well, that's what I was referring to when it came to the water bill.
Yep.
Water bill.
That is correct. But,
okay.
But just so that so for the compliance portion of Florida statute, I can do it by one letter.
Yep.
Good. Vice Mayor Harriet.
And the other piece of that is anybody moving into the city, that's where our realtors really need to step up and be accurate about what the taxes are and what the fees are. You're not assuming the tax bill of the person selling the house. Your tax rate will go up. This is something I've got some passion about because I have seen far too many times where a realtor provides an estimated tax bill based off of what the previous owner was paying, and then the assessed value refreshes with the sale price, and then everybody gets like shocked. So the realtors need to step up on that one. I'll be frank to say that. So.
Okay.
That's my passion for this.
Okay. So, Mayor, on solid waste, we currently pay we currently have an assessment of $235 annually for residential properties. Waste Pro charges commercial properties directly, so we have no, even though we see the rates, all that's handled. all that's handled separately. We're currently in negotiations. Yes, I was trying to get Tori, sorry. No, not really. We're currently in negotiations with Waste Pro for next year's rates. There's some local municipalities that have gone out for RFP, so we're taking a look closely at those fees as we do the evaluation of next year's rates. We have already been informed that the tipping fees are increasing with Volusia County because we pay the tipping fees directly, not through Waste Pro. So we will have more information, and we're looking to bring that back to you no later than the second meeting in June for their Waste Pro's new contract.
Okay. Commissioner Howington, did you want us?
So I've mentioned this a couple times in meetings. Are we also looking at the option of potentially increasing service? Because if we're going to be raising rates for people but not offering additional service, are we going to be given options to look at, or is this just going to Waste Pro and that's it? Because I would like to see options for us and have community input from our residents. Would they like to see 2 days a week service if we're going to raise the bill? If for an extra $4 a month they can get a secondary pickup, would that be worth it to our residents as well as getting recycling added back?
There is 2 days a week.
No, we only get trash pickup once a week, and then we get yard waste once a week. There are communities that aren't paying much more than the rate that would be expected in this new negotiation that would allow 2 pickups plus yard waste plus recycling. So I just want to make sure that we're not being closed-minded and that we're looking at all the options for our residents.
So I do believe the recycling is actually, they're considering removing that entirely. I mean, with the challenges with dealing with some of our foreign countries who do not, they're no longer taking the recycled products. Even some of the other company or cities, local cities that have recycling are having to look at closing those programs. So I would say recycling is probably not something that will be on the table from Waste Pro or even Waste Management now.
Well, I'm just not thinking that we need to stick with Waste Pro entirely.
Understood.
I'd like to look at everybody because I know I've just looked at some of the recent RFPs that went out, and communities are paying between $28 to $32 for 2 days a week service plus yard waste plus recycling. And so I think we're currently at $19. Do we have an estimate of where we might land at all? Because I think the numbers I've heard have been somewhere between 23 to 25.
So we have been speaking with them, and we've given them a rate based off of a recent proposal, and
we can't say publicly right now because obviously we're negotiating with them, but there are other cities that we're bouncing off of to try to come up with the lowest rate possible. But certainly if you want to pay more for more services, that would certainly be acceptable. But keep in mind, this is a 7-year contract.
Yes, sir.
So everything has gone up in 7 years.
Well, that's
so there's
correct,
definitely going to be some slight increase no matter what we do. But
if we come back and tell people they're going to be paying $25 with maybe $3 more, they can get double the service, it might be worth it to our residents, and I would love to hear from them on that.
Numbers are correct, but we know some are at $32, some communities in this area.
That's why I said some are seeing some at 28 and up to 32, so somewhere in that $4 range. I'm just saying, let's not be closed-minded. Let's be open-minded and look at all the options that are available to us.
Certainly, I think people want to go as cheap as possible, but going to 32 or up in that area could be a possibility. But I don't think people would be acceptable to that as it is, but certainly.
Well, if they didn't increase the service, I could see that being the case. However, if we offer additional service, that would justify an increase in cost.
So we would have to double the trucks in the city if we went to twice a week service, and statistics have shown that whether you're at 2 weeks or 1 week, a typical household does not increase their tonnage at the street, so not that, we give each individual tonnage, but the tipping fees and what we tip does not increase going to twice a week. So that's just been the recommendation, listening to whether it's Waste Pro, Waste Management, all of them over the years where there's been a push to go to the once a week pickup. And the other thing that was pointed out to us on the whole recycling is that if the recycling's dirty, it's already being dumped at the landfill anyway. They don't go in and try and separate it out. So it actually then winds up costing us more money to do that versus just, taking it straight to the dump. So, there's no money. They don't recycle glass anymore, and there's no money in plastics or cardboard either. So it's becoming harder and harder to find an outlet to send those commodities to.
So all I'm asking is that we're given options, because I would like to hear from the community as to what they would like to have. Rather than just cramming a rate increase down someone's throat, if there's an option for better service, I would like to look into that option. I don't know, do any of the other commissioners feel differently?
Well, I just want to say that Deltona has the largest residential.
Daytona Beach has double service. So they're
Deltona
not
has
that
the
far
biggest
behind us.
residential, and even though Palm Coast is in Flagler, that would be probably the next city that we can probably compare to Deltona as far as residential. And I can tell you that my son lives there, and he pays double of what we pay, and they use Waste Pro.
So I found out the reason for that, Commissioner. They actually transport all of their trash from Palm Coast to the Tomoka landfill. That is why their rates in Palm Coast, Flagler County in general, are so much higher. They do not have their own landfill.
And we do?
Yes, well, Deltona doesn't. We take it to the Tomoka landfill off of 415. So
But it's not ours.
It's not ours.
Right.
We pay.
It's a lot closer to you. So you're saying they're charging because of the mileage?
Yes, ma'am. Every truck has to drive from interior Palm Coast all the way to south of Daytona there to the Tomoka landfill.
Yeah, and also, since I've been here, we've been through a lot of changes with Waste Pro. They wanted more convenient trucks. Then they brought the trucks that loaded the garbage by itself. Then they felt that wasn't sufficient because they wanted somebody to physically, empty the garbage cans into the trucks. So they took those trucks out after they spent the money to bring them into Deltona. They brought the old trucks back with 2 people now on it. And I think at that time, didn't we have twice collected garbage twice a week with the new trucks? And then going back to 2 people, we cut it down to 1 garbage and 1, the other Wednesdays, well, for me it's Wednesday. And we got the best rate on that. So we also have to remember that the more we request from them, the higher they're going to charge us, the more they're going to charge us. So, we've been through a lot of, and I can tell you, I'm not advocating for Waste Pro, but we've had other bids, and Waste Pro has always come in with the best rates and the best service for the city of Deltona. So the more we ask for them, the more we're going to have to pay.
We will put together the options.
Yeah.
Waste Pro comes back to us with.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'd like to see some options. It doesn't hurt to see options.
Maybe the option is just the single pickup a week.
I do.
But we don't know unless we look.
I don't hear from a lot of people that they want twice a week pickup for garbage. I think primarily for most of the residents that I represent in District 1, I think keeping that bill as low as possible is the most important. But I have heard from a few that have large families that would benefit from twice a week pickup. So
I just want everyone to keep in mind.
Yeah, exactly.
If we do to go to twice a week, just remember it's twice the usage on our roads, twice the usage, or twice the emails. I know I have 1 or 2 residents that have consistent issues. I don't know if it's the truck that's in that specific route or not, but the oil spillage, the hydraulic spills. Again, everybody here knows I'm not advocating for Waste Pro either, but if it's something's not broken, let's not try to fix it. So we'll get the additional options, but if at the end of the day, the lowest form to our residents is to stay with 1 day a week, then we should probably not try to deviate too much from that. So,
Out of curiosity, to your point that you just mentioned, if they have newer trucks, if we go to the 2-day-a-week service, could we potentially mitigate some of those issues if they are using the newer trucks?
They're not using the newer trucks.
Well,
because
not
now
today.
they have, right.
But I'm wondering why? What would be the reasoning? Because if they were able to do the 2 days a week before, maybe that is an issue that needs to be dealt with if they're using antiquated equipment to service our residents.
I mean, I will let them speak on that behalf. I'm not sure about their trucks. When I was mentioning the trucks, it was the trucks that automatically pick up the garbage,
Yeah.
and they don't do that anymore here.
Self-loaders.
Right, so I don't want to speak on their behalf. I think they should, come up and do the explanation themselves.
I'm just glad I don't have to pick up my own trash and take it out to the landfill.
So one of the items as part of the negotiation is new trucks, nothing more than a certain amount of months old, and that they keep them within a certain period of time. So that's already included in some of our conversation. So that will definitely be part of the options that we'll bring back.
And they're having the same issue too, is that they're ordering them and the lead time is far greater than it used to. I mean, it's a universal issue on all big equipment.
I believe it's the converters, the catalytic converters and some other parts. So,
It's the same chassis.
yeah.
So street lighting, Mayor, we have quite a few street lighting districts within the city limits. So we've been informed that we're looking at a 12.93% increase potentially from FPL. So we, in speaking to Public Works, think it might be maybe half of it potentially, but we have to be prepared that whatever that increase is a pass-through to the districts. If you're a Duke customer, then you're looking at this point in time a 2% increase. So when we come to you in July for all of the special assessment resolutions to send to the property appraiser and tax collector, we will have that ironed out hopefully by then. Then Lake McGarity.
I think Vice Mayor has, and then I have a request as well.
On street lighting, the single largest request that I hear from residents in District 1 and myself is residential street lighting. I'm not talking about the big lights on the corner that are FPL and Duke. I'm talking about the ones that are in front of houses that are on the sidewalk so that neighbors have a lit path when they walk in the evenings. So whatever we can do to look into that, I would like to prioritize that, at least in District 1. I don't know if that's something other commissioners hear about, but yeah, I'm sure your district, yeah.
Which lightings are those? Because, I mean, there's houses that have...
Inside the streets.
I'm sorry?
Inside the streets.
On the streets, not on the property, the ones that are in front of their house.
Yeah, not the telephone
Because
poles.
that's on the residents.
That is, they pay for that, but I
Right.
guess what he's asking is to get some put in, and then I guess the residents, because I know the one by my house, I pay for it because...
No, not
it's
the
not
ones
even
on the
shared.
telephone poles. Like, we have one in our cul-de-sac that's on a telephone pole.
No, it's on your property. The one I'm talking about is a lamp on your resident's property.
That's owned by them.
That you have to call directly, and they'll install it for you, and then you're responsible for it.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that.
Not those, okay.
I don't think that that's what I'm talking about. I know that Commissioner Hamilton, you live in a newer subdivision. That's the street lighting that I'm talking
Okay,
about.
so I could actually speak to that because I do, we have an HOA and we actually pay for those directly. We are not one of the communities that run through the street lighting program with the city, but if I'm not mistaken, most of the communities that do, those are actually subdivisions, aren't they? I think it's like Kensington Estates is one.
We can do the same
And
thing
there's-
more or less with street lighting assessment for the residential benefit units.
Right, and so if we did that citywide, though, then that would have to be something that would be charged directly, because this is, like you said, it's a pass-through.
Correct.
And we're billing directly to the people who are getting the benefit.
And I don't know that
So I
it makes
think-
sense to do it citywide right off the bat. I think if we put districts in or smaller areas in, because it's going to take time to put them in, it needs to be coordinated with the sidewalk installs, because there's no sense in putting streetlights in if there's not a sidewalk associated with it. So I'd like to see staff put together a plan to put in sidewalks and streetlights, and specifically the streetlights, and understanding that cost gets charged back to the residents in a fee, a lighting assessment fee, rather than ad valorem.
What is the maintenance on the program, managing the program from an accounting standpoint? Is it,
To be clear,
is
you're
it
talking
difficult?
about sidewalk walking lanes, you're not talking about street lights.
That's,
Like the street lights that we have in our neighborhood, yes.
Correct. The ones that we've talked about that are like 80 to 100 feet apart.
Okay, so, I mean, we'll find out what the costs are, it's going to be
I understand.
dramatic, and then the cost of annually runs.
Yeah, I think it's like $20, $25 per light or something. Yeah.
But
And I think we have like 100 in my neighborhood.
between every other house, you end up splitting that cost with 2 houses, and it's
all right.
a sense
City
of
manager,
community.
you're-
It gives usability to the community.
City manager, you're up, and then are you, okay, so I have two requests. I'm going to ask you directly, because obviously, can we get some type of, since we're talking about street lighting, what would it take for the lights specifically on the main roads to go underground? Because that would be very beneficial for hurricane season, even for flooding. I know I've reached out specifically to both of the companies, and that actually would protect us in those 2 cases.
We'd have to put all the power. We'd have to put all the power underground because they're largely on street light or on telephone poles or the power poles.
So that's one. And the other one might not be a very popular one, but I'm looking at FPL tends to be, from the bills that I've seen, tends to be the more affordable electric option. What the reasoning is, I have no idea. Can I get some type of, I guess, budgeting or whatever it is on what would happen if we were to remove the franchise fee from customers' bills? And the utility tax as well.
Our ad valorem would go up a lot.
Well, just like you guys want something, I would like to see what that would look like.
I understand.
Just remember, when you take away from one, you have to increase the other. So just letting you know.
I understand.
Yeah.
I just, what irritates the living life out of me is we literally have this negotiation with FPL and Duke Energy, and we say, collect a franchise fee, and we promise not to start our own electric company, but they're not paying us a franchise fee. They're putting it directly on customers' bills. So essentially, we're getting our residents to pay that fee, so we don't start our own electric company. So.
Yeah, I understand why you're asking the question. I think it's a good question to ask, but we also need to keep in mind that fee gets passed on to every user. If we assume that fee and pay for it out of ad valorem, then that now will get pushed off to half of the properties.
What is that fee? Well, that's part of the question. What is that fee really is being used for? Because technically the fee is so that we don't start our own electric company. That's what that fee specifically states that it is.
I understand, but we collect the majority of our ad valorem.
I'm not trying to debate you on that. I just want something in return.
I understand. I just want to make sure that everybody, not you, but everybody understands that we collect ad valorem revenue from like half of the parcels in the city. Half of the parcels pay the bulk of the ad valorem revenue. So anything we add to ad valorem, we're taking off of everybody equally and putting it on to.
So that's why I want to see what that specific, what the utility tax pays, because I'm sure that pays something. But what is the franchise fee specifically? What does that pay for?
So one of the things that the city manager and I spoke about, that as we go through the budgeting process, we have dates in June, July, and September, but as we go through the next few months, if there's highlights as part of the budget process, that I might be coming up at the end of commission meetings to answer these questions. So I would just give you, in a nutshell, our general fund budget for this year as adopted, not amended, was $71 million. Our ad valorem proceeds was just over $33 million. So between the user fees, franchise fees, state revenue share, et cetera, those are the income streams that make up the difference that pay for parks, general government, fire, et cetera. So it would have a pretty dramatic impact to reduce it because, as the vice mayor stated, there's a lot of individuals within the city. Again, we are predominantly a residential community, and we have a lot of parcels here of residential parcels that have a lot of exemptions for this reason or that reason that I'll bring back more detail in June. But as the Vice Mayor stated, these user fees, the sales tax that we pay, that we get from the state of Florida, the franchise fees, it gets charged universally to everybody, no matter whether or not you have an exemption. So if you reduce those fees, then what that does is it simply means that we have to increase potential ad valorem millage rates, and then that only gets charged by the people, the citizens, parcel owners, based on their taxable value, less any exemption. So it just spreads the burden to a more smaller group, restricted group of people.
Okay, I understand.
But I will
Like
bring
said,
that to you.
I'm curious to what those amounts are, what they pay, just because on Duke Energy, I've seen the bills with my very own eyes, and I'm looking at people between those two fees on their electric bill alone, not exaggerating, some of them are paying upwards of $108 just on those two specific fees. And I'm sorry, but when you have a family, regardless of the size, and just paying $100, I think FPL, the average I saw was about $25. It's not bad, right? Even though that's a month. But with Duke Energy, $100 a month just on those two fees, that's just unacceptable.
It shouldn't be that high, and if there's any way that
And I
you
can share
give
some of
us
those
a
bills
copy
with
of them,
Yes.
then we can get with our representative with FPL on that if there could have been a billing
That's
error.
Is it a flat fee or is it a percentage?
It's a percentage.
So how does that work with people who have solar panels and end up only paying the $30, $35 a month? Are we in the same boat as like people with electric vehicles not paying fuel taxes? Is that, how is that?
Yes.
Welcome to the world of extra.
Yes.
Well, no, I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, I don't have solar panels on my house, but it'd be curious someone does.
I do,
if
I
they
can provide my bills.
Awesome.
I have
Thank
solar
you.
panels as well.
Do you have Duke or FPL? I know somebody with solar panels on FPL.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see, the three of us would be curious to see those.
They credit you back, right? They credit you back.
It's about how do they charge the fee?
Right, it's the fee. So how is the franchise fee being charged? Because if it's a percentage of our total bill, our minimum bill is $30. So I typically pay $35 because there's usually taxes and such. But it would be interesting to see, to compare how is this working for somebody who has solar panels versus somebody who doesn't. And maybe we pick some of that up in the permitting fees when people get solar panels.
But I'm glad that you gave that explanation, because I don't want residents to think that these fees are not being useful for the city.
Correct.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, and then our final special assessment is the Lake McGarity. So the residents around Lake McGarity, they have an enhanced level of service that they pay for exclusively, that they created their own non-ad valorem tax to get the pond maintained. Currently, they have over $95,000 in fund balance. The maintenance is ongoing. There's been no reduction at level of service. It's just based on the fee charged, it's added up. So Public Works has recommended next year to reduce it from $60 to $30 per parcel, seeing that it's their money and it's there. So staff definitely concurs.
How often this is once a year, right?
Once a year.
So this is a good example for the AHAC, the affordable housing 1%, where you could see an actual reduction.
Absolutely. Okay.
Nobody's on the board, so you can continue.
Okay. Future rate studies. So we've talked about it. It's all part of Monday night's agenda. We have requests for monies to pay for the building, general and impact fees. Those are all items that will take roughly 6 months to complete. Just based off of the fact that other municipalities already have it in their queue for this year's budget process, so we would be a little later coming in. And then I will get with Zach on implementation requirements for the impact fees. Any questions on this one?
Nobody's on the board.
Okay. Fire assessment discussion. So that's in here as a separate slide, simply, and there's no funding for Monday night on this. It's more of an open discussion to see how to move forward. It's been asked, what would a fire assessment fee be used to pay for? It can be used to pay for new and remodeled fire stations, apparatus and equipment within the stations, whether new or replacement. It can be used to pay for the debt service on any outstanding debt related to fire stations, equipment, excluding EMS. You cannot use it to pay for an ambulance. We call them transports. It can also be used to pay for salary and benefits of firefighters not on an EMS unit or any position strictly related to EMS. I've heard it said a couple of times in the day's session is, a fire assessment fee is universal across all parcels. There's typically one rate that's paid for the residential, a different rate for commercial, churches, et cetera. There's also, when you get into the detail of it, there's also, if it's put into the study, then if there's exemptions based on need for low income, there's methodologies that are utilized that if someone has a true income-based request for a reduction, they're in there. I think that just, as you're going to see at the June workshop, just how our parcels, out of 40,000 parcels, 25,000 are homesteaded. There's 13,000 parcels alone that have no exemptions or they're commercial. So they pay a much larger percentage of taxes than, someone just use me as an example. I have the double homestead exemption. So there's $50,000 of my taxable value that I just don't pay towards, any type of tax to my municipality or county. So when you have a fire assessment fee, that's something that can be spread out over all the users of the system. And I can just tell you from prior experience, where I had a fire assessment fee, is that, the difference between a fire assessment fee and someone paying property tax based on their value is it can amount to anywhere between, $50 and $1,000 difference, just depending on the value of your home. So in my opinion, it is something that we might want to look at just to see what the benefits of an assessment might be. It wouldn't, even if we look at it, it doesn't mean we have to go to it. It just means we have the hard data to make an informed decision on whether or not it's beneficial to Deltona.
Commissioner Howington, then Commissioner Avila-Vasquez.
So this was one of the items that I had asked the attorneys to go back and look at the exemptions, because one of the exemptions that we can offer is to our 100% service-related disabled vets. My concern with this, and I understand the purpose and what we would be using it for, is we're actually taking expenses out of ad valorem, which by all means somebody like me is going to benefit greatly, because I do pay $7,000 a year in taxes. And we're moving it to the much larger pool of all the homes within Deltona. So we are spreading the cost out by creating an assessment. I'm curious, what is the level of effort that's required for accounting? Because now we're going to have to start, if we were to go this route, we would have to start itemizing expenses versus fire, EMS, that sort of thing. And we have a lot of paramedic firemen who kind of do double duty. So how do we start accounting for that cost? Are we creating new need for accountants and things like that to maintain this? And then also that concern for our churches and other organizations that are going to be impacted by this that may not currently be impacted. So essentially we could be taking half of the homes in Deltona and saying, you're not paying this tax, but now you are, because this is already an existing expense on our part. The expenditures already exist for our fire. We would be moving them outside of ad valorem into non-ad valorem, correct?
Yes, ma'am. So currently, several of your questions. So Division 221 is fire admin. 222 is fire operations going into next year's budget. 223 will be transport services. With the fact that in July, August, we're going to the new UKG time system, we already have an easy mechanism by which to keep track of the 6 individuals a day that are on transports, plus the 1 or 2 people in admin that are part of the EMS system. In terms of accounting, it would not increase, other than, the chief staff and, making sure that bills come in, get charged to the 223 account. That's no big, not a huge impact. We have 1,033 veterans and disabled exemptions currently. We have 130 charitable organizations receiving the exemption as well. So we would be taking that information and providing that hard data to the company consultant that would be doing any of this. So, there is a lot to be said, and I was going to bring that up during the June workshop, but Homestead alone has $692 million of assessed value. That brings in a $4.8 million tax savings as a result of that exemption. The veterans and disabled have an assessed value of $232 million, and that's a tax saving of $1.65 million. And the 130 charitable organizations is valued at $212 million, and that's a savings of $8 million in taxes. And then you have the over 13,000 parcels that have no exemptions that are valued at $5.7 billion. And, and again, being Deltona is predominantly a residential with minimal commercial, that's where the majority of the tax burden exists. It's even on our solid waste. Typically speaking, a higher commercial customer count helps to subsidize the residential. In this case, we don't have commercial, so it's the residentials that subsidize the commercial. So all of these are things that all of this data would be taken into account by the consultant to see, is this the right mix for Deltona? It might not be. But we have to make sure that between the veterans and disabled and charitable exemption statuses out there, we have to make sure that we account for that on any type of fee structure that we put together.
Thank you.
The options that we would look for would be possibly could include, as John mentioned earlier, that if we set a limit like an income earned, that you would bring your W-2s in or your tax paperwork in, we would have a small program. That could incur a little bit of staff. We've been there before, so it's not heavy, but it would allow those who are at a level that they don't feel that they should or could pay that amount, and we can respect that, then we would administer that program on an annual basis. You can also set a different rate, and that's what they would come back and provide us as options, a different rate for your charitable versus your residential. Not necessarily the best way, but it is a way that you can consider. But you also can look at all the apparatus we're going to have to buy in future years. I've also seen programs where we've definitely used those dollars for apparatus so that you are taking that out of your tax burden, and then you look at your tax or your millage rate, how do you want to distribute that? You have a leniency then to do something from the dais as to what that millage rate might look like in the future. If you do adjust your fee schedule, right, or adjust your dollars. But the biggest thing is really what's the outlook for these 6 stations? If you're going to build stations, how are we going to pay for them? Are we paying for them out of ad valorem or impact fees or something else? So there will be a cost to do that, or even if it's remodel 1 or 2, there's a cost. So just looking at that big picture will bring you back ideas. There will be a lot of options. They're accustomed to giving you multiple ways to look at that. You can also limit. So these are programs that will be brought to you that could have a 3-year limit, could have a 5-year limit. Some of them will go with let's say it's a 20-year build, so it'll go with a 20-year build if you're looking at building stations, but we'll bring you lots of options so the public can look at that, but as well as you to consider that as we move forward. So that will probably be an ongoing conversation through June and July, and we may bring some of those options. It may take longer than that I believe they were looking at 6 months before they could give us really anything if you all want us to go that direction, because they're not ready to provide us that information right away.
That's correct. So we don't have to have the complete study, just the needs assessment. So if the needs assessment shows that it's, a path to move forward in, then there's just certain key things that have to be done in the November-December timeframe by meeting mandatory statutory requirement newspaper postings 5 weeks leading up to a resolution being passed no later than the second meeting of December, so that we inform the property appraiser tax collector of a potential non-ad valorem assessment. So, as we go through this budget process, I'll bring more information to you, on what any required steps are.
And even if we do meet that requirement and advertise it, if you decide at a point in time later, again, that can just become null and void. It's not a big deal. We just need to meet the requirement. If you're moving us in that direction and still deciding, we need to meet that requirement, but then we can always back out of that if that's something you choose as a commission.
Thank you.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez and Vice Mayor Harriet.
Thank you, Mayor, but I got my answer.
Okay, Vice Mayor Harriet.
So I would really like to see what that looks like, the fire assessment fee. I think what I'm looking for is to spread that burden, since it's a service that everybody in the city receives, every parcel in the city receives. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that paid for by every parcel in the city. I would also like to see, as part of this, a corresponding reduction in the general fund millage. That is a priority for me, to make sure that we are spreading that cost to every user, every benefit unit, and then reducing it, an equitable reduction from the general fund millage. Yes, absolutely.
And I saw that.
Yeah, and Commissioner Howington, to your point, I'm extremely supportive of our military veterans that gave it all, or gave a significant portion and are 100% service disabled. And I think it's important that we do have a mechanism for those that are financially constrained, so that we're not putting an undue burden on them, since they did give their time to allow us to be here. So I would like to see that mechanism for them to have the hardship assessments, more or less.
But seeing that we're doing the mid-year budget Monday night, would there be consensus for me to add funding for this to be looked at?
Yes, for me.
Yes. Okay. Well, then I will amend the backup for Monday night, and I will get that to you all first thing Monday morning, which would incorporate that additional fee.
So just remember, mid-year is on the consent agenda, so if you have any questions ahead of time and we can answer those, please reach out to us. But I think we've gone through with several of you the agenda, so it would just be adjusting it by this exact amount that's needed, and we would make that change, but not change it from consent.
Perfect.
Okay. So, Mayor, in summary, this morning's presentation includes $71.7 million in capital improvement across numerous funds and funding sources. Most of it as stated, within the general fund, and a good portion of stormwater and water wastewater is completely funded as is. We have over $5 million in capital replacement for vehicle and equipment. Most of that also is funded from prior year appropriations and set-asides. Over $2.1 million in enhancements. And we've talked about planned fee implementation between October 1st of 2025 and April 5th of 2026. That's a Monday. So unless there's any other questions regarding that, we will look to start putting all of these items in the planned budget document that will come back to you in June so that you can see the funding and where it would come from, where it would go to, unless there's any questions.
Commissioner, I'd like to go back. I have a couple questions about stormwater.
Yes, sir.
I had them in my notes in the back, and I thought we were going to ask questions at the end.
And by the way, I think we're still doing questions at the end.
Yes, sir.
I can wait till the end. That's fine.
Okay.
This is the time, the next thing is the next steps, which I think,
Okay.
yeah, maybe the next steps, let's ask all the questions down and then go to the next steps, because that's just giving us.
A reminder. Yes, sir. So our next budget workshop and action dates are as follow. On June the 23rd at 6 p.m., we will be coming back discussing revenue projections, operating and capital on projects that we've placed in the budget. On July 21st, we're setting the maximum millage, as well as we will have all the required resolutions for the various special assessments that we have to inform the tax collector of for the trim notice. And then in September, we have 2 required statutory public hearings. The first one will be on Wednesday, September the 3rd at 6:30 p.m. And the final public hearing where we set the final millage and budget would be Monday, September the 15th at 6:30 p.m. I have nothing else at this time, Mayor.
Commissioner Hall, and then Mr.
I'm in the stormwater section 422 as far as the funding for projects. There's no funding for the Amboy, it used to be called the Amboy project, the Midway project, I think we're calling it now.
The pump station?
The pump station, yeah.
So I will refer to, obviously, staff, but I'm not sure all the naming.
It's under the rib.
Commissioner, if you don't mind, we're looking at other funding opportunities as well besides just the city. We'll be making application with the county for Transform 386 for this project, along with multiple projects. We've made applications with appropriations for that, for the design, engineering, and permitting component of it. So we're looking at different opportunities and just not, trying to hit it all at one time. But because we do not have this project design, engineered, or permitted, that's kind of our first step. So.
Okay. All right.
And we're hoping to hear from Tallahassee first also before we come back to the commission to say there's no other options.
And I have one other question as far as the Amboy area there, the Piper Road, where there's the stormwater drains constantly back up after heavy rains. Is there anybody looking into that? I know all the residents there are using sidewalks. They built sidewalks across the swales to get to their mailboxes because it's constantly filling up with water.
I thought we spoke about that, and my team has been out there, but I'll double check on that next week. And I also want to bring up to everybody's attention, through the Division of Emergency Management and Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, that some of their funding has opened up statewide and then countywide, so we're also working with our consultants. It doesn't necessarily have to be mitigation for stormwater. We're looking at making application for permanent generators at our traffic signals so that we're not running around with temporary generators trying to keep traffic signals moving and other things, and see where we can maximize those applications, and hopefully we'll see some positive outcome. But those are long and arduous programs. They don't happen overnight.
So I don't have to stand out there with a yellow, green, red sign?
You still will have to do that. So we'll make sure you got safety equipment as well. So.
Yeah, I didn't see that. We need to get Deltona TV to make sure we document.
There is no part of that comedy show.
And Mayor, I might point out, Monday night also, we have $900,000 that is going before you for approval regarding the Transform 386. That is for the Providence Watershed Basin, McGarity Watershed Basin, and Gleason Watershed Basin. So we have quite a few things that are part of, and we have additional as part of the Hurricane Milton FEMA reimbursement. We also have stormwater pipe repairs, et cetera. So there's a lot of items on Monday night's budget amendment related to stormwater.
Okay, so Thank you. A couple things, and then I'll get to, of course, not everybody wants.
Commissioner Hamilton first.
Let me ask a couple questions, and then I'll get you guys as well. But relating to the budget, the backflow preventer project and the future costs to that, are we taking all that into account?
Let somebody else answer that. I'm backing as far away as I can.
Okay. For which portion?
The backflow projects.
Backflow part, you're talking about the budgeted item on here? Yes, that's a city cost, not reimbursed by any other entity. One of the things that we found with the way that our system is set up, say for example our meters, you have one meter box, and in that meter box you've got two services. Okay, so whenever one person is not using their water, the other person turns theirs on. There's a small amount of backflow that can go from one home to the other. To keep any house from having any sort of hazardous material introduced to them by something that their neighbor is doing, they have a residential dual check backflow, which is a lot less expensive than the RPZ or reduced pressure zone backflow that we currently use everywhere in the city. So that project that we actually approved last year, we had a much higher cost last year that we've begun implementing in the community. Those are only for low hazard situations. So there still will be instances where some residents will need a RPZ installed, but we have to have our cross-connection control program rewritten and approved by DEP and then approved by the commission in order to move that forward. But those particular backflows that we're talking about are to protect our current residents, and it has nothing to do with any new development.
I just want to make sure that the future costs of these backflows are being accounted for in the budget. That's my concern.
Any new development, those cost of those RPZs or any sort of backflow is captured by impact fees from that developer. This particular piece here is for existing homeowners to protect their health.
Okay. And then on some of our lift stations, are we trying to budget for us making sure that each of the lift stations has some type of generator, preferably one that's not
standards?
It's just there.
Standards today already they already say that, hey, if you have so big of a pipe, then you have to have a permanent generator or bypass pump installed. So that's what our standards have been up until now. We're rewriting our standards to say, hey, any new lift station that is put in by a development, they bear the brunt of the payment to put that bypass pump or that generator in.
But on the older ones, are we putting that somewhere in the budget? Because hurricane season is around the corner.
Correct.
I know we can't do nothing between now and then, but for the next coming years, are we making sure we are rectifying that situation so that our lift stations have a permanent generator on?
We've currently submitted for those HMGP funding for some of those to be installed in some of our most hazardous locations. The other ones, we stage during storms. We stage portable generators at those high-risk areas, and we can always shuttle portable generators around to keep from having any sort of sanitary sewer overflows. The last couple hurricanes, we haven't had any sanitary sewer overflows because of flooding of a sanitary sewer lift station.
Okay. I have two other questions, and I believe it's mainly for the fire department. Doc, when we're looking at this new fire station, right, for budgeting reasons, are we looking at the big picture as to, do we need to relocate more than just one fire station? So strategically, we can make sure we're reducing our times to get to whatever incident we have, and not just relocating one, because if strategically relocating two makes more sense and is more cost effective to get everything done all at once, I think for under a budgetary reasoning that would be a lot better than just looking at relocating one. So I want to make sure that for budgetary reasons, we're looking at the big picture of this is the map of the city. Here are the current 5 fire stations we have. We want to add an additional one, but do we need to relocate another one just to make sure that we're covering the city in the way we're supposed to? Because one of our big responsibilities as commissioners is safety, and that's a big part of it.
Staff is discussing, it hasn't brought to the commission yet, but we're looking at one station that would turn into 2, a little more north, a little more south, so it'd be better coverage for more responsiveness. Other new station possibly up north, where 2 stations are trying to go through some side roads to get up there. And then one on Fort Smith, we would actually build a new one right next to what was apparently a temporary fire station 25 years ago. It's still being used as our temporary fire station. So it's a little mixture of everything, but certainly the numbers and responsive time is the number one item that we're looking at as far as staff. But the fire station will be doing, fire department will be doing a presentation to the commission in the near future to see where you want to go.
Because we could be applying for, there's grants there that would cover, for example, I mean, this is just my opinion, but we should have at least 1 transport unit in every station.
Amen.
Right? And there are grants that cover, 75% of, or 50% of that person's salary the first year, and it's like a skill.
You're talking about safer.
Yes. So those are things that I believe would help our budget. I mean, if we can start looking at that, because
it will in the beginning, but long term, you just added a whole lot more cost.
Just so you're aware, because I've heard from different firefighters that they get to a scene in the big fire truck, they're putting wear and tear on it, and really what they need is a transport. And I know that a lot of that has to do with the cost, but if we make sure we have a transport in every single fire station, I think that would help reduce a lot of the wear and tear on our roads. The wear and tear on these vehicles are extremely hard to receive, which is one of the reasons why in that one budget meeting, which I've told the chief a couple times, I wasn't supportive, not that I wasn't supportive of the 1 fire truck, we could have just paid essentially for 2 transport unit versus a 1 fire truck.
Yeah, as the commission knows, we can't really transport without the county's permission, so that's a little something else out there. But up to 80% of calls are more paramedic than fire, so certainly the focus should be on the paramedic side, correct?
My last question, John, what would it look like for us to do a 1% of the budget, kind of like what AHAC is doing, right, for debt services? I mean, is that something that would even be feasible for the city if it's going to help pay off our debt a lot quicker?
So let me make sure.
So right now we have 400, and it goes to debt services.
Correct.
If we implement a 1%, that's an additional 300 and something thousand, roughly, right? Because it'll vary. That would go to debt services as well.
Only for the general fund or all funds?
No, just the same way that the affordable housing, so only general.
Okay. We'll look at and I can provide it to Doc on Monday.
Okay.
As part of that, can we look in to see what the savings would be on the interest page?
Perfect. Thank you for that, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Howington, Vice Mayor Harriet, and Commissioner Caldwell.
Can we get a breakdown? I've heard a lot of costs from prior years, reserves are being used for the upcoming year. I'd like to see what is the breakdown for the current year expected roll forward versus what might be prior to current year. I figured you'd probably have something like that. So just so we know, and then how much is going to be expected from grants and any state, federal funding, just so we can kind of see and maybe even help residents understand what is the breakdown for what the city and the residents are being expected to bring forward versus what projects we expect to be funded elsewhere.
So I can just on a quick recap, the fiscal year 9/30/24 audit is not complete, should be complete here in the next couple of weeks. But just looking at where we're at right now, we have $78 million of prior year fund balance. Of that, $16.8 million has been utilized in the current year budget. We have restricted reserves of $12 million for economic emergency, 10.3 million for natural disasters, just under 400 for grant match, 1 million for economic development, 1 million for infrastructure reserve, the set aside for the 26 vehicles of 3.2 million, the required reserves of 10.7 million, the money that's part of the next Monday night's budget for the building an opioid of just under 2.6 million. That leaves $18.7 million of unrestricted fund balance. Once the audit is completed, then that number will be provided in a much clearer, defined detail. But that's rough as of today.
Good job.
Thank you.
That's it. Commissioner Harrington, you're good. Vice Mayor Harriet, then Commissioner Caldwell, and then Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
I just wanted to make sure that we were still looking at or have submitted for the Lake Helen Osteen Elkham intersection for Transform 386.
Yes. Yes.
Going in, yes.
It's going in. Okay. Do we need to allocate any budget for that this year? Any cost share match?
Again, I believe that's the items that's on mid-year, so it's on there.
Awesome. Even better.
To recognize the 900,000, it's on there. Let me put it that
This would be in addition to the 900,000.
Only the 900's being recognized right now.
Okay. And then I had another question, but I can't remember it right now.
Okay, I'll come back to you then.
No, don't worry about it. I'll email staff when I remember.
Commissioner Caldwell, then Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
This question is for Jim. Back to the backflow preventers. You had mentioned that when there's a dual valve in a location, that there's some slippage that comes back?
Correct.
So does that mean that at some point everybody's going to require to have some type of backflow?
That's what we're doing with these residential dual checks, is we are slowly implementing them into the existing water meter boxes to keep that small amount of backflow from happening.
Is there a cost to the residents?
There's no cost to the residents.
Okay.
It's a public safety. It's a public safety issue, so we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to keep the public as safe as possible.
Awesome. Thank you.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. So we've gone, first of all, going back to the opiate funds, where is that allocated to?
So we've received from the state of Florida and the various companies that settlement of $135,000 were required by administrative requirements of the state of Florida to have that in a separate fund. So that is completely restricted.
Wasn't that awarded to the fire department?
It can be used for several things, but one of the things that I'm speaking to the fire department about is additional equipment, maybe looking at AEDs that might be out of date here at City Hall and other city facilities. We just had a grant from the county, which is the same pot of money, but from the county side, that we just purchased. They're not Lucas.
The Zoll. Did we have to buy the Zoll with that, I think, too?
Yeah, I forget the name. Started with an A. Chief, what was the brand of stuff we just purchased a couple of meetings ago? Instead of the Lucas CPR, the Zoll Auto Pulse.
But it is being used on the fire department.
That is correct.
Okay, no problem. So I've heard of every department in the city of Deltona that's being helped or funds or whatever. I've not heard anything with code compliance. Does that mean that they don't need any help? There's nothing to be changed? There's nothing to be added?
No, actually, we just ordered vehicles for them here last week. We have more vehicles that are part of next year's vehicle replacement.
And they're part of your mid-year. There's a couple changes in there for mid-year, I believe, but they'll be an operating function that we'll bring back to you for June and July.
Okay, and I don't know if this is the proper place to mention it, but is
Body cams.
Body cameras we're including also for code enforcement for safety.
and that's going to be in another budget?
Monday night, we have body cameras for animal control and code enforcement, where we have some money set aside for brand-new tablets, whether they're Android or iPad, I'm not quite sure, but we have quite a few items for them. I can tell you it right here. Yeah, between the vehicles.
For building.
Correct.
And that also will include animal control?
Yes, ma'am. Most of the items as it relates to animal control, because they don't truly have buildings, these sit within City Hall or 255 Enterprise. There's not a whole lot of CIP related. They're mostly R&R and maintenance items, so it's more in the operational budget versus a capital budget.
Okay.
The only thing capital for them would be their animal control trucks and code compliance vehicles.
And we just pushed through a purchase order for an animal control truck last week, I think.
That is
so.
correct.
I think that finishes his trucks at this point. Is that correct, Danny?
And if you go to tab 7, you can see in the very last pages, you can go in and see all of the code compliance animal control vehicles and the anticipated year that they're to be replaced.
Oh, okay, because we didn't go into that conversation. So is that, is in the animal control funds, are we still keeping the TNR program in there?
Yes, ma'am, and that will be part of the June budget workshop.
Okay. The other question I have is, we have the space that we keep the animals at, which is near Festival Park or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. Is that being upgraded, or, because it's kind of old?
I will defer to Danny on that question, ma'am.
Get the formal manual.
Yeah, you have to stand next to it.
I understand it. Danny Ron, co-compliance. The structure we have here currently, it's meant for 4 animals. It's in good shape. We have plans to move it from the current location to 255 Enterprise Road.
Oh, okay, because I know that was built quite a long time ago, so.
I believe it was built in 2016, 2017
But
area.
that's a long time ago.
No. But it's in good shape. It's in good shape. We maintain it.
Okay, and I was just questioning because I didn't see you here, Danny. You know I care about you.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, like I mentioned, there was the vehicles. We are adding body cameras for the officers. Also, update the tablets that we use to enter the data into the system.
Thank you. Appreciate those information. Thank you.
All right, this time we're going to go ahead and go to public comments.
There's no stands.
Okay. This time, city manager comments.
Yes, Mayor, appreciate council and commission for everyone today going over some of these topics, but as always, give us a call, go through the books, look for questions in detail. I'll make sure every staff person's available, no matter what level, to make sure questions are answered, and we go through this process over the next few months with all the information that you guys need to make some solid decisions. Appreciate it.
Before I hit the gavel, Vice Mayor, nothing else?
I told you I'd interrupt you.
All right, meeting adjourned.